start that. I hope it actually works. Everybody, welcome to the Airbnb Automated Club. I'm your host, Sean Rakijich, and you've got a killer panel of moderators to start off. The conversation today is real estate myth busting, and this is being recorded live streamed to YouTube, so that way you can come and find this content later if you would like. This morning we did one called Airbnb Millions, and we just kind of got really crazy and started giving away a bunch of stuff. It was super fun. Today, or this evening, I'd like to squarely focus on the assumptions that we've all made in real estate from what we've learned from like the old dogs in the industry, and things that might be slowing us down from making money in real estate, because real estate is an industry that you can be creative in, and I think there's just a lot of assumptions that we should break down. So again, my name is Sean Rakijich. I would like to introduce our moderators by asking them an interesting question, and let me make you guys some moderators so you can pull people up. And since it's Haley's first time in Clubhouse, I'm not going to put her on the spot and make her answer anything on this first round of questions, but she can introduce herself if she'd like. So Brian, question for you. What is the most interesting or creative real estate play you've done to date? Getting off mute is creative.
Great question. I'm trying to think specifically. I guess one is probably the best, but I know for doing the arbitrage model, we've done Airbnbs, and so we had a building specifically that it wasn't adept to having a short-term rental operator, but they did have specifically a need for an amenity of having a guest suite, because they were actually losing a lot of their long-term business because they didn't have very many two-bedroom floor plans and the costs were prohibitive. So we ended up turning our units into becoming the community's guest suite, but at the same time it allowed us to be able to have short-term rental clientele and for us to be able to kind of get around the issue that they have with short-term rentals. So I'm Brian Fontenot, based out of Houston, Texas. 2.5 years ago, I was probably in one of the audience shoes, wondering how can I get an Airbnb and make it to a viable business for me. Fast forward, it was one of the best decisions that I've made, and I'm looking forward to sharing everything I can to be able to help you.
That's awesome, Brian. Thank you for the introduction. You are the man. You did that perfect, by the way. I like how you did that in format. Bill, the pressure's on. You got to follow up Brian. Can you tell us your most interesting or creative real estate play that you've made money on to date?
I don't know if there is anything interesting, to be honest with you, but I know what is interesting is I want to ask Haley a question. How long did it take her to work with you before she could enunciate your last name correctly?
That's a great question. I actually, thankfully, was friends with Sean prior.
Yep. So your answer was she had it from day one as far as working with me.
Well, this is like I think our fourth or fifth room together. I don't know that I could even say it correctly yet, but I'm working on it behind the scenes. My creative, I don't think I really have done very many things that have been creative. I kind of followed, kind of textbook in investing. For me, to be honest with you, it was helping a friend 1031 out of a property just south of Nashville, Tennessee, where I live, and then basically taking over the management of that property, which was about $120,000 a year gross property, and it leaned into him buying a house down at the beach. Now I manage that. That's a $200,000 a year property, to another referral that I just actually, you can see on my Facebook stories, I just took over a lodge of all things to manage in Nashville. So I think the creative component is people that are trying to get in. There's a million ways, I'm sure you're going to talk about this, Sean, how you can make money and even make millions in the short-term rental space. But I think it's leveraging brand, and most importantly, network becomes important. So I really never had a plan to get into any type of management, arbitrage, co-hosting. I'm the guy that buys and sells real estate, and it kind of just fell in my lap. So I don't know if that's interesting or not, but that's about all I got, because I kind of followed textbook, to be honest with you.
Doing a killer job making money textbook is probably, like, in a way, impressive, right? Because I think there's so many of us who are really bad at coloring inside the lines, and that's probably why we never got through school and stuff like that. So it is impressive to be able to do something by the book. You can brag on that for sure. Noble, it's on you. please let us know, what's the most creative or interesting thing you've done in real estate?
Awesome. Well, I think in regards to the short-term rental space, was negotiating a deal for a number of townhomes that we put zero money down in. We paid zero rent. We paid zero for utilities, and they cash flowed in a major way. So happy to talk about that as we move forward. But my name is Noble. I'm with the Hospitality Cash Flow Club Room, and so happy to be here, share the stage with you guys. Thanks.
Good to have you as always, Noble. Now, Haley, she is the director of my company, Pad Suites. She's essentially the one who runs the entire thing, that gives me the freedom to be on Clubhouse with you guys. Haley has been picking up rental arbitrage on her own inside the company lately. So, Haley, if there's any of the deals that you've done lately, since it is technically real estate, that you think that you did something particularly creative or interesting in, feel free to share and introduce yourself to the world of Clubhouse. And welcome.
Hey everyone, and thanks for the welcome, Sean. This is Haley. I've been working for Sean for about 2.5 years now. I don't know if my phone thing cut out when I was trying to explain, but it took me 6 months to learn how to pronounce his last name. So, anyways, so I think the most exciting or creative thing that has happened is actually most recently. One thing I'm proud of that I try to make a priority of mine is developing really good relationships with property managers, and that has resulted in us having a property manager who moved from one apartment complex to another one in a different city, and she invited us to come out there and have 10 additional leases at her place. So wherever she goes, she's just going to invite us to join her.
Yeah, that's big. And it was actually a huge win. When Haley called me and told me that, I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. Because we could use some extra leases in Fort Worth right now. And, of course, Haley's connections is what got us there. So, Haley, you're awesome. The world needs to know that. And I'm sure through this Clubhouse call, they are going to find that out in Technicolor. So it's great to have you on here.
Thanks.
Mac, Mr. Seattle, same question. What have you done that's creative, interesting, fun like that? Anything from your real estate place?
Sweet. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate being up here with you guys. Super, excited for this. So in 2018, a lot of the units where I had properties, it was under one company called Holland Residential, and they were pretty friendly to short-term rentals, and or more so corporate housing in that sense. So they had about 15 properties, and I was maybe about 5 of them. And what ended up happening was I had developed I formed a strategic partnership with Oakwood Corporate Housing for their internship program, who was with Facebook at the time. And then once I kind of had that in mind, that's what we were going to do for the summer, that was, where we make all of our money, typically doing Airbnb on these units, like shorter stays. We just decided we're going to just work with them and then give them our units as a wholesale partner for 80 days. So at that point, once I figured that out, I was like, hey, I'm just going to try to figure out how I can get as many units as possible, even if the property I don't intend to stay on, because they might not allow short-term rentals. So one property of theirs luckily had 10 units that they said, I knocked on the door and I said, can I have 10, as many units as I can get for 4 months. And luckily, they no other company already approached them. So I essentially they worked out 10 units, which ended up being 14 total. So we rented the furniture for that set of units, and then basically they were $1,600 a month. And then we basically got about $6,000 a month in revenue for about 80 days. So the whole deal ended up being that specific set of inventory yielded a lot more than the rest of the inventory, just because of the getting in on when the market's hot, and then not really having to deal with those properties and try to fill them in the winter months. So that whole project ended up being about $1.5 million in revenue just for that summer. And then that subgroup of units was just obviously the one that really killed it. So that was kind of what we did. That I think other people, depending on your market, if it's seasonal like ours, we lose a lot of money in the the winter months typically. So that's kind of something that I like to look back on and say we did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, so you used business to business in the short-term rental space to jam a ton more money and survive what is normally a terrible winter.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, the thing was, is renting the furniture is what we did because I didn't want to own more furniture. I had like 80 apartments of my, that like, I'm like, I don't want to own more furniture. And then I used Azuma to basically take care of that because they were a huge furniture rental company in the market for like companies that were already doing it at scale. So I just said, why not use them? I don't need to make these units fancy, and they can kind of get the job done in like a day, like 5 units, like in one day. So that was, I think it was $400 a month to rent the furniture. So when you do $1,600 a month plus $400 for furniture for a 3 to 4 month term, and then you're getting paid like that, it's pretty profitable.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations making that move. And for those of you in the audience, and those of you on the YouTube audience, by the way, because this is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube, what Mac is really pointing at is probably the future of short-term rentals, which is that we start with Airbnb a lot of times because it's the most notable name in the business, right? We get our furniture, we get our apartment set up, we start taking Airbnb guests, and then we realize that there's other channels like VRBO or Booking.com, and then you realize you can make your own website and get direct bookings, and then you'll start to see that there's chances for those direct bookings to be businesses that book direct with you. And you're like, oh, wait, there's more of this out there. How can I go out and get the business clientele? And so Mac was able to outbound business to business and make a killer amount of money off of a sale that he achieved, leveraging real estate in order to sell a business on staying in those places. This is the future of short-term rentals, is mixing business and leisure travel in cities, right? If you're in a vacation destination like, say, Costa Rica, you might get a company that does a retreat every now and then, but it's way more tourist. But in cities that Haley and I are in, Noble, Mac, people in the Northeast, like these major metros, there's a lot of business activity, and corporate housing has existed for a long, long time. I actually have a friend who bought into Murphy's Corporate Lodging out of Houston, and I got to see a little bit behind the wheel with that. And yeah, what they do is they have business connects, and somebody calls them and says, hey, we need 10 apartments for employees for a few months. Can you find us something? And then they go to apartment complexes and say, hey, we'd like to rent 10 apartments for 3 months. Can we get a 3-month lease? They do what Mac does. They rent the furniture. They set it up, 3 months of rent that they make a markup on, and then they shut the whole thing down when the business customer leaves. But when you use like an Airbnb model like us, you're signing long-term leases for very little extra work. We're having people move out. We never move out the furniture, but instead we just redouble our efforts to find a new person to move in. And if you run a good business in the short-term rental space, you can have somebody stay for 3 months, leave, and then somebody checks in the very next day. And they can stay for 2 months or 3 months. And you've got this hyper-efficient corporate housing company that never has to worry about moving out or moving in furniture. It's probably one of the cooler ways to do business in my opinion. And I love business customers because they pay more money than a regular traveler. I don't think, Haley, correct me if I'm wrong, have you ever seen a business customer on Airbnb like ask for a discount?
Actually, no, now that you mention it. I haven't paid attention to that specifically, but thinking of it, I don't think so. It's just vacationers that typically ask for that. Occasionally traveling nurses, but that's the extent.
Yeah, contractors, people have to pay for their own stuff and get reimbursed, or people traveling on their own dollar. And a lot of hosts will laugh about it. We'll make fun of these people in Facebook groups going, yeah, you don't ask the taxi cab driver for a discount. You don't ask American Airlines for a discount as you've flown into my city. You don't ask Starbucks for a discount on the coffee you just bought before you sent me this message. Why are you asking me for the discount, right? Of all these people, you could ask for a discount. Why are you asking the host to discount the price of their homes? But businesses, they don't do that. They're like, what's the rate? Like, what do we got to pay to stay at this property? And businesses tend to just be better customers. So I think all of us, in the short-term rental space, should be eyeballing businesses as one of our main customer types wherever applicable. They just do better. So guys, oh yeah, Mac, mic's off. Go for it.
Oh, thank you, Sean. Yeah, just to add to that, the thing that allowed the partnership with the corporate housing company where we became the wholesale partner, which I think you can do as well, is you kind of look at how they might be set up and analyze it. Like the company was Oakwood, and they had like they have a difficulty managing their inventory when leases come up. So they're really in a tough place at scale, like how many leases they can keep and when they want to renew them. And like, depending on the project, the timing of the year, like in the summer, for example, they have to scale up like 300% over what they're used to carrying. And then if you look at when we go ask for leases, they're like, how much is it up the premium on a 3-month lease? So you can really help those companies if you're have the unit inventory type. And then there was no negotiating when it came to, I'm like, I need to make at least $200 a night, which is what I kind of expect through Airbnb. And they didn't really push back because I realized then that they needed me more than I needed them. But I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to lock this down for you. And I see that you have a need here. And it was pretty solid because like, they really like struggle, as I mentioned, like getting those 3-month leases for their clients. So I mean, if you look at the price, it's probably 40% more for any of us to sign a 3-month lease. So their profits are crap in that situation. Whereas if you partner with them, you know, it could be beneficial. So they're not losing money on those, some properties where they have to have a year-long lease. That's like a whole bunch of them just struggled on their 30-day model to fill them up year round. So that's kind of like analyzing where these corporate housing larger ones are kind of like, it's kind of difficult for them once they've been around for a long time to kind of keep their profits. And so them partnering with a company that's smaller like makes sense if you have the same inventory type.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we talked about. Well, yeah, Bill, go ahead, jump in.
Hey, one little nugget that I want to share with people. So I live in a town called Brentwood, Tennessee. It's 15 miles south of Nashville. And actually what I do outside of my Airbnb business is I train B2B sales. So when you're in that space, one thing that I would pay very close attention to for your data mining, your lead generation, is the URL extension on an email. We get that through VRBO. We do not get that through Airbnb. It's one of the reasons that I like to use a platform like, using my air quotes, Stayfi, to where I can capture email addresses when they log in. And one thing that becomes really important, I mean, the reason I told you where I live is Nissan North America headquarters is here, about 5 minutes from my house. I used to own a ground transportation company. They were a client. We were moving hundreds of people a month when I owned my ground transportation company. I'm going to guess, this is just a guess, probably 20-25% of them were going to non-hotels. They were going to residential locations. They're going to apartment complexes, that type of stuff. So if you can data mine that information, you can go to the procurement director, you can go to the travel manager. Those are the two people that are typically going to make the decisions if they have a managed travel program for these large corporations. But at the very root, pay close attention and capture the emails, not just for email marketing, but for your lead generation on this B2B side of the business.
That's awesome. And if you want to speak later about developing a pipeline of business clientele, asking for referrals, whatever you think best practices are, we can make a room about that. That right there is something we talk about for an hour.
I'm down, 100%.
Yeah, the business sales is where it's at, guys. Noble, Brian, John, do you have any thoughts you want to add in on that? Business customers.
Go ahead, Noble.
Yeah, I can tap in on that. We do quite a bit of direct B2B bookings as well. Our process is not quite as automated as what Bill has outlined, but it is quite effective. So as an example, one of the things that we do when we're looking at different properties is we first of all start with the verticals that we kind of play in. And so we look for opportunities whereby we can leverage those guest types at new locations. And so as an example, and I've given this before as an example, we were looking at a property in far north Dallas. And what drew us to that property was there was a government facility, was a Raytheon facility, right? So Raytheon does some defense contracting and other things. And so what we did was we identified a property that was immediately across the street, a multifamily property. So we went to Raytheon and we said, we would love to be, one of your providers for housing, lodging, accommodations for some of your employees and government contractors that come to the facility to work. And so we were able to find the individual at Raytheon who kind of was in charge of that process. But during that discovery phase, if you will, we found out that a third-party travel and lodging company helps Raytheon Global manage that. And we were put in touch with that travel company, did a little bit of LinkedIn research to find the exact person that we did. And like Bill mentioned, we were able to get ourselves placed as a vendor with the purchasing department, whereby we accept POs for purchases for lodging and guest stays. And so we still have that property till today. It was with some work on the front end, but that property is a cash cow, really, to be honest with you. And it's very predictable revenue because, as you know, when government employees travel, they travel under GSA rates and have lodging and accommodation per diems. And so we're able to, capitalize on that.
That is awesome, by the way.
Are they telling you in advance? I'm just curious if the arrangement is for them to say that they're going to want those units for the entire year for this set amount of employees, so you kind of, it's more easy in terms of knowing what to do with the lease when renewal comes up? Or is it more they kind of come at the same time you're adding units? I'm just curious. Does that make sense, the question?
Right. So now that we're a preferred vendor for them, because they did have some local hotels that they were utilizing and they still do use. But now that we're a preferred vendor for them, they reach out to us first for availability. So we've renewed that lease, obviously, a number of times already. So now we're in a much longer term lease. But yeah, that's at a high level, that's kind of how it works.
Look, Noble, if you remember your room, the cash flow diary room a couple days ago, when you had, we're talking about Turo and Airbnb, and this is something I think that's really important for everybody that's in this space to understand. And understand, I don't live in the arbitrage and the master lease space, but I do live in the global business travel space. And we talked about GDS a few days ago, but what I want to let you know is, about 5 to 7 years ago, excuse me, all these travel managers, the one that, like what Noble's talking about, that work for Amex Travel, Carson Langlet, World Travel, all these huge travel companies, what happens is they put 1 or 2 or 3 travel agents inside of the headquarters at Nissan or Dollar General or HCA, which was a client of mine. Actually, Noble, you and I should probably talk if you're going after healthcare. I can give you some intros there. But they're the ones that are managing that travel. And 5 years ago, Uber and Lyft were not acceptable for a managed travel program. It was traditional limousine ground transportation companies, taxis, or rental cars only. Now Uber and Lyft dominate that space. The same thing has been transitioning and happening over the last 2 to 3 years, and especially because of COVID, they've moved away. A lot of travel managers and managed travel programs for Fortune 100, 500, 1,000 companies have moved away from hotels and have moved into the Airbnb space so they can have more seclusion. They believe that it's safer. So remember, Amex Travel, Carson Langlet, World Travel, all of these are the huge travel agencies, and they're the ones that control a lot of those Fortune 500 travel plans.
This is awesome, guys. This has been kind of fun. You guys know so much about the business clientele side that this thing has been running itself. I appreciate all the input that you guys are putting in. Let me reset the room, the obligatory reset. Everybody, welcome if you are new to the group. We are in the Airbnb Automated Club. It is being live streamed to YouTube, so those of you without an iPhone, I hope you're tuning in on YouTube right now. My name is Sean Rocky Cheech. I am the host of the YouTube channel Airbnb Automated, where we talk about using Airbnb to make money in real estate. And today's topic is real estate myth busting, and we've got a really cool panel of moderators from different parts of the country, all the way out to Hawaii. And Mac, well, actually not Mac, but Bill, I wouldn't be surprised if you're pseudo-international with your whole luxury property play soon. So today we are talking about real estate myth busting, and we actually got on a tangent about how the future of short-term rentals is business. And I guess how does that apply to real estate myth busting? Well, a lot of what the whole point of us talking about Airbnb and real estate is that a lot of us have assumptions based on how we were raised. I know when I was young, I was told get a mortgage, buy a house, get a tenant, right? And it's very linear. And if you wanted to get creative, you could do owner finance, or you could do like a wedge deal, or you could do a fix and flip, or you can force appreciation by buying a bad property and then making it good, or you could do some wholesaling, or there's all sorts of these real estate plays that everybody does. And there's nothing inherently wrong with doing what everybody else does, but I think one of the biggest myths in real estate is that it has to be like time-tested, proven for decades for you to jump in and feel safe. Because real estate is one of those investments where people want to feel safe, right? That's why they get a mortgage, they buy the property, it's an appreciating asset, and their retirement is safe. A lot of people invest in real estate for the sake of their retirement. They're not getting into real estate to run a business and to flip a business for $50 or $250 million. That's not typically why somebody gets into residential real estate. I think that's one of the biggest myths. And that's why there's a connection here, and thus we're talking about business clientele and Airbnb, because Airbnb is just so much better for any property's cash flow. I don't care how you picked up a property, you will make more money short-term renting it than long-term renting it. Just the cash is there in short-term rentals. I would recommend to you all listening in right now, ping your friends if you want them in to be able to ask questions and to learn from these generous moderators that are teaching you things. Click the green house to the right of Airbnb Automated up at the top to follow the club, and also follow the moderators. It's Haley's first day on Clubhouse, and she is teaching you guys what it's like inside my machine, inside my Airbnb business. She won't give you any BS. I might be overly polite about how we do, but she'll probably talk to you straight. So follow her as well, since she's a new Clubhouse moderator. And that way, if she's in a room talking about real estate, you can get her opinion on things too. So moving forward, I would like to invite 2 people up from the audience and 1 person from YouTube to ask a question. Raise your hands if you would like me to bring you up on stage for questions. I'll give you guys 3 seconds. All right, Stacy and Corvetta, your hand's been up. I think that we're going to bring you up. Hopefully you have a question. So Stacy first, and then Corvetta second. Hit us moderators with your questions. Corvetta, you can go first while Stacy is working her way up to the front.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm in the process of just doing the startup. So I'm working with, I'm in the Chicago area, and I'm working with this property, and I paid my administrative fee. I found an apartment, but they sent me over the corporate application for the rental, and they're asking like different questions, like the trade, like they wanted to get trade references from me. And I don't have that information because I just started the business. So should that be a concern? And if so, or if not, how should I answer that question in order to complete the application?
Sure. Do you have friends who are business owners?
I do.
Okay. Hey, Brian, you wanted to answer it. Go for it.
Yeah, so there's a couple of easy ways to quickly pick up those trade lines. What they want is references, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing that your business is less than 2 years old, some apartments, even if you don't have those trade lines, you can still get around them. What they'll do is what's called an owner's override. So a lot of these apartment complexes you go to, they may say something by Greystar or something else, but they're actually not owned by Greystar. Greystar's third-party manages those. So you can get anything that you report in a business that makes payments, you can report those as a payment history. What they're trying to do is just make sure, hey, if you acquire these leases on these apartments, can we guarantee that the money's going to be made, a payment's going to be made every month? And that's what you want to guarantee. So, alluding to what Sean was about to get started on talking about was that you can focus on being able to go to people businesses that you work with locally, and use them as references that you have good payment history. There's also, when you go into credit card, like business credit building, there are a couple of different places that you can go to be able to get a really easy account setup. So some of those are called Uline, Quill, Brinkers, and they'll be able to real quickly create you what's called a Net 30 account. A Net 30 account starts your payment history after probably about 60 days. Once all you have to have is an account number with them. But the beauty of going to these companies I mentioned is that they'll let anybody sign up, and if you sign up, they'll create an account instantly. And as long as you make some payments, they will report it after probably about 60 days time. So you got two different ways you can go about getting the trade lines that you need to be able to show payment references, whether you go somebody locally to do business with, or if you go through these companies.
Okay, got it. And I did sign up this week for the Quill and Uline, but it's going to take 60 days before it starts to report. And I should have probably waited to start looking for places to rent out. But yeah, I'll reach out to some of my friends. But I was just trying to be honest on the application. So yeah, I'll reach out to some of them to see if they'll be willing to, give me a reference.
Once you go in Granger and Quill, and you make a payment, you make a purchase, and you elect to have an account, they'll generate an account number. When you fill out the application, they're going to ask you for a number, who to contact. You just give them a customer service phone number, and you can write your account number there. And you fill out the requirements of what they're really looking for on the application, even if it hasn't reported to your Dutch registries.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, Corvetta, you're breaking up a little bit. Corvetta, you are breaking up.
Tonight.
Hey, Corvetta, can you hear us? I think you're breaking up.
Just send the application over. Okay.
Yeah, so you got a choppy connection. Another tip for you, if you can hear us, is pitch single-family homeowners first, because as you develop those trade lines, single-family homeowners might be more easily influenced to say yes, regardless of how old your property is and where their trade lines are, and it gives you more practice. You get more practice to pitch landlords with single-family homeowners. So I would recommend that you start with single-family homeowners as you develop those trade lines and get a little age in your company, and that way, when you go and approach an apartment complex, you have a better shot of getting approved. That's little sauce for you. Go ahead, Mac.
Thank you, Sean. I would kind of say I haven't really done this, but I have had great relationships, and think relationships with the property managers are something everyone should really focus on. Like, for example, do you live in an apartment right now, or do you have a landlord right now? Would they be someone that you can use them, so you don't even have to, do you have a landlord, or do you own your own real estate right now that you're living in? Is my question. And would they be a reference for you? Because I'm assuming if you are a renter, you're already paying them, and then if you have a great relationship with them, to kind of open that door and then use them, if that makes sense.
Okay. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah, you're better now.
Okay, yeah. So my parents currently own the property that I'm staying at now. So am I able to use them as a reference?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay, yeah.
So Mac and I are probably sharing the same philosophy here, which is if you've done business as a professional, you have a reputation, credit score with different people that you've done business with. You let them know that you've started a business and you'd like to use them as a reference for your startup. And people are going to call and just please say nice things about my company and how cool of a business we are and how cool I am if they ask. And you could still get approved because you don't know really exactly what questions they're going to ask on this reference check. They're probably going to ask if you've ever been late on a payment, right? Well, no, you've never been late on a payment. Your startup hasn't paid an invoice yet, but these companies that you're friends with are probably going to say it in a way that doesn't really, say, oh, yeah, well, we haven't sent her an invoice yet. I mean, what are they going to say? So we actually got approved for a building called M-Line Tower with a 2-month-old LLC, all based off of references from friends of mine. We just checked to see if we could pull it off, and it worked. And in Dallas, M-Line Tower is one of the nicest high-rises in the city, and they approved us with no bank account, no cash flow, 2 months old, no trade lines, and just 5 references from business owners. So it does work. is the point. So
Awesome.
yeah, Stacy. Well, Corvette. I hope that answered your question. And for the sake of speed and to keep this thing full of information, Stacy, it is your turn to ask a question.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thank you for this opportunity. Today's my first day. So, my scenario is that I own two properties, one in Fort Lauderdale and one in Atlanta. Both are 5 to 8 miles from the airport and about 10 miles to like downtown entertainment. And I've decided to go into the short-term rental business. I just don't know where to start. With the Atlanta property, I've already notified my tenant that, he needs to be out by the end of May. I've set up the Airbnb host, and I literally have 3 weeks to get that place like furnished and ready to go. My property in Fort Lauderdale is fully furnished. I live in it, but I would like to use both or probably market both properties. Because of location and proximity to the airport. So any wisdom, feedback, my biggest fear is that I will spend a lot of my savings getting the Atlanta property up and ready, being that I have to furnish it.
Anybody got some advice for a new host in Atlanta that's going to put all of her savings into an apartment?
This is Noble. Let me just tap in here real quick. Stacy, I believe it was. This Atlanta property that you're gonna move online, is this I might have missed it. Is it a single family or a duplex? What type of property is it?
It's a townhouse.
Okay, got it. And then how many bedrooms and bathrooms?
It has 2 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, 3 levels, 2-car garage, and basement.
Okay, got it. And how much capital do you have access to?
Now I have access to about $8,000.
Okay, got it. And how's your credit? Good, fair, what?
Excellent.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents on it. This is certainly not for everybody, but given your situation, your location, the type of property that you have, I think you're in a good position to do a couple of things. As far as furnishing the unit, so first of all, usually we advise people to, and this is something that probably Sean differs a little bit on, but I'll give you my take. Usually we advise people to kind of get an understanding of the type of guests that they want to accommodate, and so with that type of guest, maybe that guest is comfortable with a Target level product. So you got Walmart, Target, Nordstrom's. Maybe that guest is comfortable with a Target level product. Okay, maybe that guest wants a Nordstrom level product, right? Or Walmart level product. And so when you have a good understanding of the types of guests that you're looking to service, that can really drive a lot of the decision making going forward in almost every aspect of the business. And part of that obviously is furnishing the unit, right? Because you're going to, for the budget conscious buyer, you're not going to put Nordstrom furnishings inside of the unit, right? And so once you kind of nail down, the type of guests you're looking to accommodate, you'll have a better idea of what is best suited for this property in this location. And then you'll have an idea of, hey, do I need to go to Facebook groups and Facebook Marketplace to look for items and get it, on the low or on a budget, or do I need to do the Nordstrom model and partner with an interior design company and max this thing out to the nines? And then there's a middle ground with that Target level product. And so I think your budget, you can get it done, but I would start more so with the with the type of guests that you're looking to accommodate, and let that drive part of your decision making and how much you use to furnish this property. But Atlanta, based on what you've said so far, it's an excellent market. I think you'll do well there, and I look forward to hearing you coming back and sharing with us how you've done.
Okay, I've already identified my target group, and as far as decorating, I've just decided to use an online decorating service, which I've used before. And typically you just pay a flat fee, upload your floor plan. They will provide you the furnishing, the furniture links, and all of that. And I typically just go that route, and I'm able to stay within my budget. So I've identified targets. I want to market to people who are coming into the city to have a good time for the weekend, and then move into maybe like girls trips or like guys trips, maybe some family gatherings. So that's the market that I plan to market to. So my design is probably going to be a little like boho chic, so to be comfortable. It's not going to be flashy, so I can stay in that target range that you referenced.
Awesome. Well, it sounds to me like you almost answers your own question. So you know who you're looking to accommodate, you know the guest type, you know what your budget is, you know where you're going to source and procure the furniture and accessories for your property, and now it's just a matter of just taking action and getting it done. And so, I would say by all means, get that bad boy listed and up on the channels and start making some revenue with it.
Okay, and then any feedback for the Fort Lauderdale property?
So, same situations, regardless of what city you're in. Just, understanding the type of guests that you're going to accommodate. Fort Lauderdale, I don't know if your property's on the beach, if it's in the city, what the case is.
It's like 10 miles from the beach.
Okay, perfect, 10 miles from the beach. So maybe one of your, what I call guest avatars, which is your customer type, maybe one of those is the destination traveler. Maybe it's that small family or that couple that's looking to get away. And so, maybe you want to furnish it in a way that appeals to that destination traveler, right? And that may be one of many guest avatars, but you'll want to spend a little bit of time with that. But I know operators, in the coastal cities in Florida who are doing quite well, even amidst the pandemic. So, again, one of those situations where I'm going to recommend you, get started, stay started, and then share your success with us later.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hope that helped. We are actually going to pull a YouTube question, guys. So remember, you're in the Airbnb Automated Club on Clubhouse. We're talking about real estate myth busting, and this is being live streamed to YouTube. So we're able to take some YouTube questions from people who don't have iPhones or just are choosing not to use them. This is a fun one because I think even Haley actually might even be super specialized to answer this question. There's a gentleman named Mike O'Tren who is asking any advice on staging more than 5 apartments at the same time. Specifically, he's wanting help with timing furniture and stuff. He's saying logistics is getting tricky. So who here has any feedback from Mike, advice on staging multiple properties at the same time?
Well, I'm literally here doing that at this exact moment with 10 apartments here in Fort Worth. And it can get a little messy, especially if you don't have a plan. It's something I'm actually trying to get started on right now for our little team here is like a spreadsheet, knowing what we have in total in our inventory right now as far as like dishes or furniture pieces, TV, not just TV, but also the TV remote, all these little things that we need to make sure each apartment has. And then also another sheet, like documenting the apartment number itself and, each individual items we as a team have witnessed are already in it and what it still needs. So that way we can each kind of like see it together on our cell phones, and all of us know, okay, if you want to work on this apartment, you work on this apartment, we'll try to bring all the missing items to that one. Now, I don't know if you have, like you're just buying everything brand new. We're currently recycling some of our old inventory. And so if you need to go shopping, you can still utilize the same thing. One person can go to the store while the other person is setting up an active unit. If you're doing it by yourself, God bless you. I highly recommend getting a couple of helpers for sure.
Yeah. And so to add on to what Haley just said, because that was all good. Haley's all about being organized, having lists, and being able to break down inventory distribution. And having a team, of course, is a lot about that bottleneck of like how many hours can you put into a unit. Some numbers to know is internally, we believe it takes about 13 to 16 hours per apartment, like a 1-bedroom apartment, to stage it, right? So getting the furniture, like assembling it, shifting everything around, mounting the TV, connecting the internet, unboxing the dishes, getting it ready for photos, 13 to 16 hours per apartment. So if you have 5 apartments, you're looking at 50 to 60 hours of labor, right? And so when you think about it, if you're doing it by yourself, if you worked bell to bell for 5 or 6 days, you could do 5 apartments on your own for 5 or 6 days. But now here's the thing. You just paid rent for 6 days on 5 apartments, where if you hired one person to help you and you both worked bell to bell, you get all 5 up in 3 days instead of 5, and you paid one person for that labor, but you saved 2 days of rent on 5 apartments. And that 2 days of rent on 5 apartments might be $100 per apartment. That's $500 you just saved, right? So there's a trade-off between how much you're spending in rent per day and how much you're paying in labor per day. And there's going to be this beautiful balance, that'll save you the most money. And of course, there is a critical mass where, like, if you picked up 1,000 apartments, you can't just magically hire 200 people, right? You just don't get to find 200 people in your back pocket and pay them to set up 1,000 apartments. So there is this scalability question here. So very commonly in these Clubhouse rooms, people ask me, how would you do this? I would say sign one lease, future date that lease 7 to 10 days based on how long it will take you to get your biggest pieces of furniture. Couches and mattresses tend to take the longest. Dinner tables tend to take the longest to get in. So plan when you start your lease based on when you can get your couch, your dinner table, the mattress, the stuff that's big. Then start buying all the stuff that comes faster, a few days before your lease is going to start. And then do this for like 4 apartments worth of furniture, 5 apartments worth of furniture, but you're going to ship all of your stuff to that one door. And it becomes your staging area. It becomes your storage unit. From there, you're paying rent on one property, and you can unbox everything, do inventory, and then from there, you can move everything from Unit A into Units B, C, D, and E, and just activate those leases as you're ready to push the furniture into those units. So you might sign lease number 2, 2 days after lease number 1. Lease number 3, you might sign 4 days after lease number 1. And then lease number 4 and 5, you might sign day 5 after lease number 1. And that's how you can optimize when you sign your leases based on when you get your furniture. And that way you can build out as fast as you're comfortable with based on how big your team is. So instead of you promising all 5 leases to start the same day, you signed one lease to start on a certain day, and then you start to massage lease start dates based on like how well you're doing. Of course, you're putting a little bit more pressure on your landlord or the property management company, because essentially you might tell them, hey, we had a furniture delay. We need to sign these other 4 leases a week later than planned. I would rather do that to a landlord based on logistics than have signed all 5 leases and then be sitting there with 5 leases waiting for furniture. I'd like to sign one, find out that we have a problem, and then push the other 4 back. So that's my advice on that answer. You guys, Mac, Bill, John, anybody have anything you want to say to this person on YouTube?
Did that beautifully. Thank you for that, Sean. I agree. I think it also depends on your goals, and like for Seattle, for example, I knew that I wanted to ramp up right before May, because having as many units in May is like perfect, right? Like I don't necessarily want to add units like crazy in September and October and November, meaning like that's why I talked about renting the furniture earlier, to kind of take some of that weight off my shoulders, like meaning how fast you can scale depending on the season. So I guess that's a question. It kind of depends on your yearly goal. My goal was to kind of have a consistency of about 5 units a month, but that changes when you approach like April and May, because in summer you're killing it, typically, like generally speaking. And so, you might be able to, like, to say you get properties offering units left and right across the city, like how are you going to take care of that? So like it allows you, if you add that to your playbook, to go in and say, I'm going to rent furniture, and then come back to this and add that furniture when I'm not like so strapped on manpower, to kind of like get those units set up, or like decommission them if it's like, for example, like you have a request of 30-day bookings, or clients that are booking more long-term. There's different things you can kind of add to that, to what Sean said. That was just basically, it kind of just depends on some of the things as well, I think, like how fast you can get it all done.
I haven't put on 5 to 10 units at one time, so I can't speak from that perspective. But there are layers of like the big furniture first, and then and then the accessories, and then the dishes. And so, what I would say is really thinking about like the phasing of what level of finish you're getting to. And like what Sean said, timing it so that, you have the bulk things in and maybe 1 or 2 units ready to go, but also building in enough time so that you are getting all the final finishes, all the little touches that make your property unique, building that into the timeline.
Yeah, right on. I'm glad that we all agree on this. And I will say, there is a fact of the universe, you will forget stuff. And it's been the running joke in my life that for the first year and a half that I was doing hosting, maybe even 2, but definitely for the first year, I would forget things like toasters. I would just forget that an apartment deserves to have a toaster. And you could just imagine everything else that I would forget. So you should always plan to ship stuff in, unbox the stuff, remove all of the trash from the apartment. This is something I teach in my course, and it gets a little nerdy. But to be specific, you load an apartment full of all the inventory, you unbox it, and you remove all the trash, because the trash will it'll disorganize your brain. It's harder to see things when there's all this Amazon boxes and plastic everywhere. So remove all the trash and then do an inventory count against a list, an inventory list that you've already created. And then you're going to go, I forgot the toaster. So somebody's going to go to IKEA and buy extra plates, plastic plants. They're going to buy some toasters. They're going to buy some extra decor. And a lot of times we don't buy our decor online. Like Haley will actually send somebody to go buy decor. She'll do it herself. We'll go to Ross. We'll go to At Home. We'll go to like Marshall's Home Goods, or we'll make our own home decor, because it's part of that, like the custom touch, I guess. It's part of the human touch. And you can buy some decor online because it fits the model. And we have like studios in a box that I have like designed like on a website, and you could buy everything and then even include some of the artwork. But even with that said, each home should have some personality. So when you unbox everything, you do your inventory and you buy the things you forgot about, you start to set it up. That final day, you're looking at the place and you go, you know what? It may just not feel human yet. So what you do is you go through and like ask yourself, what do I need to add to this place to make it feel like a home, right? Make that house a home before you get those photos up, and it's going to increase your revenue. Mike from YouTube, I hope we answered your question. So we can't ask for feedback on Clubhouse because he can't talk to us. So that was kind of fun. We've got a couple people I want to introduce because I forgot to. John, you jumped in. You've been helpful. You're a host in Hawaii. We'd like to have your introduction. And then Theron, awesome guy who's doing a fundraiser right now. I think we owe you a chance to introduce yourself. And I think Brian, I think you just showed up too, if that's correct. So in that order, John, Theron, Brian, please tell the people who you are.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me up. I really appreciate it. And I always learn a lot from everything that you put together and everyone on the stage. My name is John. I have a hospitality brand called Ohana Stay in Honolulu, Hawaii. And so I've been running this short-term rental business for about 5 years now. And one of the things that I enjoy is playing with the technology that allows short-term rentals to run smoothly. And so I geek out with that. Just one quick thing. I know before you were talking about business to business, during COVID, I had a staffing company help me keep my units occupied with doctors who were flown into Hawaii to help mitigate the effects of COVID. And so that business-to-business contact was really helpful for me as well. Reliable rent payment and people who took care of my units. So I just wanted to throw that in after the fact. But thanks for having me up here.
Yeah, of course. And John, the answer to your question that you haven't asked yet, yes, Haley would love to come to Hawaii for 5 to 7 to 10 days, and she would totally take a look around your properties and tell you how you can improve your Airbnb business in exchange for Haley getting to stay in Hawaii for a week.
I would get to visit old friends and family.
You read my mind, Haley.
I'd love to.
Reach out to me.
Old friends and family out there. I've spent a few years there too, so I'm familiar.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to be out there next week again. So anyone who wants to fly out, ping me and we can all meet up.
Did somebody say mastermind? Right? Is that what they do? Destination mastermind? We all just fly out? Yeah, and we got some claps. All right, John, you're hosting the mastermind. It's happening.
Bring it.
All right, cool. All right, Haley, DM John, and we can start planning this thing. Thank you, Haley, for putting that into the universe. Haley for my birthday, or was it Christmas? She's always super awesome and buys little gifts, and she knows I love pocket squares because I love suits. She got me a pocket square that has a map of Hawaii on the pocket square. So it's mostly blue because it's all ocean and it's got the islands on it and stuff. It's a pretty awesome pocket square. So I get to think about Hawaii a lot of times as I pick out my outfits. But Haley loves Hawaii, so I'm glad we were able to make that work. Moving on, Theron, you're up, guy.
Sean, always a pleasure. And before I start, Sean mentioned this fundraiser super humbly. It's like, oh, there's a fundraiser going on. Like, he wasn't involved in it at all whatsoever. But I got to give a big shout out to Sean because he was generous enough to offer his product offering for free to people who donated certain amounts. And I'm telling you right now, Sean, we're about at the $1,000 mark for just your donations alone. So, Sean, I just got to give you a big shout out for that. You're going to help a whole lot of people with that.
Well, remember, it's not me donating the money. They are donating the money. And my goal is to get Jay Massey to go homeless because he's doing donation matching. So I will give away free products all day in exchange for people to donate so that Jay has to cut a $50,000 check at the end of this.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we appreciate them. They donated, but your offer is what got them to do it. So I owe you absolute praise for that stuff. And don't, I totally told him. He knows.
Good. Good.
Exactly. So just to introduce myself to anybody who doesn't know, my name is Theron Lewis, and long story short, I went from having a decent short-term rental business, about 10 properties in Detroit, and I was almost about to lose all of those properties due to a ban in Detroit. And we went from that to actually getting the ban pulled, being at the table with city council. So we're with them creating ordinances for the city now. And now I've grown my business to the 7-figure level in 2 cities, all just from advocacy. And this is something that it's not only something that I can do, it's something that anybody can do. And I've dedicated as much time as possible to just spreading the gospel of short-term rental advocacy and showing people how to do good for their communities and do good for their business. So, and Sean's been a big proponent of that too. So shout out to him. And you guys are definitely listening to the best source of information for all of this stuff. And I also have to shout out to Bill too, because he was the first person that during that fundraiser to offer to match donations for the people that got out of the gate and started donating first. He's the one who caused people to start donating, and I have to thank Bill for that too. Thank you so much, Bill.
Wait, so
are you going to share how much you raised?
So this is the thing, they're still coming in, so I want to make sure that I give you guys a good total. We should know everything by the end of the week at the absolute latest. So by end of day Friday, we're gonna post on Instagram, and we're gonna shout it out to the heavens and let people know how many people are great supporters of our industry.
So for everybody out there, I did a $250 donation, and Theron, I'm going in and doing the $500 match. I had to limit mine to $500 because I don't have Jay Massey money. But if everybody here knows Jay, let's boost this up as big as we can for Theron, because this is a national program that's going to help every one of us today and in the future.
Exactly. And Bill, come on, who has Jay Massey money? All right, first of all, that you not only did that donation, but you caused Jay to follow up and try and beat that. So you're the person who started the donation wars. Okay. I think we owe everything to you on that. So it's much appreciated, Bill.
By the way, guys, Ellie earlier on our Clubhouse this morning, she just stood up and dropped $1,000 on some girl from Puerto Rico as a gift. I don't know if you guys caught that this morning.
I caught that. That was awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I was like, girl, what's up? Go full Oprah on that. That was awesome. So Brian, I'm sorry to steal your thunder by saying Ellie dropped a G on people. Don't worry, you don't have to give away $1,000 to introduce yourself. It's always awesome to have you. Feel free to let the world know who you are.
Hopping back in. You know, Elliot raised $1,000. I'm about to go try to go borrow $10,000 so I can be like Oprah for real and give lots of money to people. But Brian Fontenot, host in Houston, Texas, started 2.5 years ago. Kind of being a shoes probably a lot of people in the audience because I didn't know what I was going to do after quitting my job and giving away all my money away and charity. But fast forward 2.5 years, Airbnb, short-term rentals, and learning this whole business short-term rentals has changed my life, and I'm hoping to be able to change yours with any kind of gems I can provide.
Good to have you. So with that, everybody, let's actually talk about some real estate myths. Who here, as a moderator, has something that they learned when they were a younger newbie in real estate and they realized that, well, as soon as you actually got into real estate and started doing stuff, that what you learned was completely wrong? Any of you guys have any of those?
I'll jump in, Sean. When I started in real estate, I was in my 20s. I'm 47 today, and I don't know that it was completely wrong, but even as recently as within the last 6 months, I have a lot of friends in my network that invest into real estate, and they still believe that long-term is the way to go. I talked about earlier how I do a textbook. I guess I'm a little bit nouveau riche with the textbook on the short-term rentals, but I think people that are still in long-term don't really understand the cash flow and the returns, at anywhere from 4 to 5, sometimes 8, 9 times greater than LTR.
Yeah, 100%. And here's one that some of you guys might agree with. One of my favorite myths about real estate is that being a landlord is passive income. Who here has thoughts on that? I think TJ is the landlord host / arbitrage, but John, go for it.
I've dabbled with being a landlord, and my father-in-law has a couple buildings in Brooklyn. And so it's definitely not a passive business if you're the actual owner of the property, unless you have management, and then it could be somewhat passive. But yeah, it's just being called in the middle of the night and, your refrigerator is broken and you've got to take care of it in a day or two. And that's when I had a 9 to 5. And so it's definitely not passive. What I would say is, in a way, short-term rental, to me, seems more passive than long-term rental because there's consistency and there are more systems in place that actually, once you have the systems running, you can be on top of issues and take care of it, and you have a team taking care of it. And so, yeah, I definitely would not say either is completely passive, but in a very odd way, I think short-term rental is more passive than long-term rental.
And you know what? We've got a couple of my favorite people who popped in. There's Norman, there's Robert, Ellie showed up. Oh man, Ellie, we were just saying nice things about you. Let's bring you guys up here. So, and let me just let you guys know, Robert, Norman, Ellie, see Haley in the upper right corner here? I don't know if she's in the upper right for you guys. This is the Haley that runs my show. This is the girl that does it all, and she's now on Clubhouse. And we get to hear from inside the curtain, not just all my opinions about how this goes, but we get to hear from the inside of my business what it's like from Haley. So please welcome her, guys. Norman, feel free to say hi. Tell people what's up. You're out of town, aren't you?
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey guys, my name is Norm Hamilton. I'm based out of Houston, Texas, but I've been living in Mexico for the past month now. I'm a host based out of Houston, been doing it for about 4 years, and my business partner, who is actually not here right now, is based out of Dallas, Texas. So we pretty much run most of our business remotely with the help of our team that we build, and we also have virtual assistants that help us run our business based out of Lagos, Nigeria, and that's my story. I'm sticking to it. One more thing, we just launched the management arm of our business, so we got a couple deals in the pipeline that we've been working on, but this past year has been great. Even with COVID going on, we've just grown our business and things have been doing really well for us.
Right on, Norman. And Robert.
Norman is sitting down in Playa del Carmen right now, living the life, and you all can too, and we can all be sitting here leveraging real estate assets. They even made a rap song. Are you down with OPP? Other people's properties. They were talking about something different, but I'm talking about other people's properties. I tell you what, it's an amazing time right now to be in this industry amidst COVID, I'm in Texas, and all the available housing just got wiped out by this Texas storm. But I don't know, how you doing up over there, Sean? Are you seeing longer? Are you getting those insurance golden ticket reservations?
We've got a mix of insurance, I think, but not like direct from insurance company payments, but from people. I actually had a phone call I was supposed to get on with an insurance company today because Haley got busy. They called me, couldn't leave a voicemail. I called, left them a voicemail. So we're working on some. I just got to get these people on the phone.
Solutions is your number one gambit. Then there is temporary housing solutions, temporary housing relocation specialists, and they are your golden ticket like Willy Wonka because they'll typically pay about $1,000, $2,000 more a month. And full rider addendums, $5,000, insurance policy for your contents. They go all out. So a Texas property availability.
It was ALE. ALE is the one we're talking to, and they tried to headhunt Haley. I think it was ALE. Haley, was that correct? Did they try to hire you?
Listen, what would you expect? Like you got a diamond past the rough. So, you can't expect good talent not to try to be stolen.
Yeah, it's expected. She said that it was a person named Jay, that there's a girl that represented a person named Jay, and I was like, oh, Jay Massey's trying to headhunt Haley? That'd be funny. But then it was this other company. I'm like, oh, that's not Massey's company. But I think Haley's probably working on these 10 apartments right now. Like she said, she is staging 10 units at the same time, so she may not be at her keyboard per se. So it's good to have you guys. Ellie is in and out of some meetings, so she's not going to be moderating with us at the moment. But we're talking about real estate myths. And so Norman and Brian and Robert, I think you missed the last question, which was there anything you learned as a younger real estate person that you found to not be true or accurate when you finally started making money in real estate? Any myths or assumptions that you had to change in your brain as you became a professional?
I guess I can go first. So definitely the idea that like managing a whole bunch of properties long term was passive income, especially if you're doing it by yourself. I actually used to manage a couple properties that I personally own in Houston, and I found that it was easier and less work for me to manage my short-term rental portfolio with our company than it was to actually manage the duplex that I owned, just because I was, with the systems that we had built as a company with our short-term rentals and like our mid-term rentals, like we were able to like constantly get people who fit like a certain avatar. Obviously sometimes you get people who like party and stuff, but like there's ways to mitigate that. But like because we were getting like repeatable guest profiles in our properties, like our property quality pretty much stayed the same. Whereas like with our long-term, when I was doing long-term rentals, especially when I first started, like I think I pretty much all the money I had made from long-term rentals, I lost it when the guests had moved out. Even after like we fixed the property up. And so like I'm pretty much pro short-term rentals, I'm pro systems. I'm pretty much in love with the business model right now, and I will fight anybody to the death over whether or not long-term rentals are better than short-term rentals. I wholeheartedly think short-term rentals and mid-term rentals is the way to go.
High five, Norman.
My only question is, who's joining us at the MRA? Sean, I've got a room for you.
Well,
you certainly better join us.
Well, I've always had this rule that I wasn't going to go to VRMRA unless they were going to like invite me to speak.
Don't be so egotistic.
Well, it was like a pride thing.
I love you to death, but sometimes isn't it better to be, sitting from the back, admiring? If anybody in the room is going to sit here and stand precedence, you're the one to be that. So I certainly have spent my years, learning from your accolades and learning from your fine-tuning, and have also enjoyed and bought your classes. So, but the MRA, this is really the testament of everybody meeting up and coming physically together and sitting down and talking about building industry standards. That's what I love about it. It's building industry standards to set precedents to this industry, because we all as operators can set that precedence to how we manage this, not other agencies or entities.
Yeah, and I meant that as a joke, kind of, because one of my goals was to speak at VMRA, And it was before I even knew what it was. I'm like, when I first heard about it, I'm like, oh, it's probably one of those like Grant Cardone style seminar things. But, like, I'm not going unless they invite me to speak, because I thought it was like something like that. And then I found out that VMRA is kind of like that more prestigious like conference like CES, or like one of those big like tech conferences where it's like it's the whole industry meets up. So I was definitely wrong about what I thought VMRA was for like a good solid couple of years. So yeah, I mean, it would be the biggest honor in the freaking world to speak at something like that. But yeah, I'm showing up without getting to like be anybody of importance, and I'm cool with that. So I definitely would love to go out there. So I will take that room. And
I personally have your tickets, so I'll just say that.
I will take it. I will take it. So Norman, John, I think we all said the same thing, right? Being a landlord's not passive income. I also want to address something that I don't know if you could say that it's a myth, because I just don't think that people are kind of aware. But a lot of people invest in real estate because they want to build an asset, right? They want to pay down their mortgage and build their asset. And I think what some people don't understand is that there's more ways to build an asset than building equity in a property when it comes to real estate businesses, right? So short-term rentals like us, you look at a company like Sonder is worth $1.3 billion, right? With a B, $1.3 billion. And for the last 6 years, they've been picking up leases, same as a lot of us do, right? Bill likes to own luxury property. So, Bill called himself the black sheep of the group, but he's still awesome. He doesn't do arbitrage per se. But a lot of us do what Sonder does, which is sign leases with other landlords, solve their problem, and then make cash on their property. And so we're using real estate that we don't own to generate cash, and then our operating margin on that business, right? You have a business that doesn't have assets, and that's okay, because if you think about it, a lot of transaction-based businesses that are software-driven, their only asset is their software, which is still just IP if you think about it. These businesses have an operating margin, and if it's healthy, that business is worth a lot of money. Clubhouse is worth over $1 billion now, right? $4 billion is what Clubhouse is worth, and it's a software that doesn't really have any monetization yet. It's still worth billions of dollars. So if you guys think about it, you can build a business in real estate and not need to own the real estate to have something worth money, to have an asset. If you own an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, single LLC, whatever, and that thing makes profit every year, right? And it's got a margin percentage of profit, like you make 10% operating margin, 20% operating margin, that business is worth money and you can sell that business. There's never going to be a time that a straightforward profit-producing business cannot be sold to somebody. There's always somebody looking to pick up a profitable business. So this isn't necessarily a myth, but let this be your public service announcement that you can make money building wealth in real estate, not owning it, if you own the LLC that generates margin and use somebody else's properties. It's a totally cool way to go. If you have anything you want to say about that, about owning a business in real estate, not having to do with the asset that is the property, I would love to hear your guys' perspectives.
So, Sean, I've always had a question. It's come to my mindset that I believe, that the convenience, which is really the cornerstone we're providing a convenience against the market where traditionally you need to spend thousands of dollars to go in, to lock down your utilities, to lock down furniture, to lock down a lease. We're providing a turnkey lease, and our competition is the local hotel room, providing what I find is somewhere between $1,500 to $1,800 a month for that efficient suite. Even there, you're not fully at a kitchen accommodation. So I found that some of these multifamilies will gravitate as short-term rentals become, more aggressive. They'll gravitate towards 5%, and we're talking to portfolios that are moving to their multifamily to 5% of a furnished accommodation, purely just to be able to provide the convenience. If a client comes and views the venue and they want to move in, what better the ability than just to say, hey, we've got a place available right now. Why don't you move in? But in the meantime, you're going to be more incentivized to move into the unfurnished, which is a fraction of the cost. But in the meantime, we can provide that kind of transitional housing. you're in town right now, staying at a hotel. You can come and stay on site for a couple weeks while your furniture's getting delivered, and move right over to your place. And I personally, that's what I see. Units 50 plus. I mean, you could easily say well over 100 plus. They're going to have a furnished accommodation in order to, provide convenience for clients just moving in immediately.
Yeah, and so if you think about large apartment complexes, they're pivoting into the space. It's almost like what would you say? It's like an indicator. It's an indicator that this is a move to make. Kind of like I had an hour-long consulting call right before we started this room, and one guy's like, "How do you do market research? Where do I know where to start?" He's in the suburbs of Chicago, and one of the many ways that you can do fast market research is look for a hotel that's getting built. Right? If you see a 4-star hotel dumping millions of dollars into a neighborhood to build some gigantic hotel with 300 keys, well, think about it, right? They put some money into knowing that that $8 to $15 million that they're using is going to get put to work that in a way that it's profitable, right? So CVS did this to Walgreens. They let Walgreens do the market research. They let Walgreens set up the pharmacies, and then CVS is like, okay, cool, let's set up across the street. We already know Walgreens did the market research. So you could pick up apartments like a block away, 2 blocks away from a hotel that's getting built because you know that hotel has reason to build there, right? That's an indicator that you will be successful in short-term rentals.
The old-fashioned McDonald's theory, Burger King just putting one on the other side of the block.
Yep, exactly right. Mac, go for it.
I'd just like to kind of share a little bit and then talk. So are we talking about essentially appraising arbitrage business and like a company like Sonder? Is that kind of the subject? Because I've thought about that, and is that the topic? Like,
yeah. So it's the concept that a company like Sonder can fetch a valuation, and we can argue, of course, what they could get valued at. But the fact that any business that's profitable can have a valuation, and thus that is an asset.
Okay, so I kind of just wrote down some things that come to mind. So like, for Sonder, I'm assuming that they've picked up quite a bit of B2B throughout this pandemic. It seems like I've heard that they have a lot of 10 plus day stays. So that's one area to kind of like appraise and say like, well, who are the companies that Sonder has picked up, or any of us, right? So if regulations that's the other thing. Are there regulations in your city? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is like the lease terms. The other thing is profitability. And then like your access in some markets, I guess, to then apart hotels. So those are like 4 or 5 things that I believe, due to the upswing in regulations in a lot of these markets, and like that where some of us are in, like me, and Theron, and I think Dallas, right? So so those are some of the things that, having, how do you appraise that with some of, like, is kind of the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around, and this also not miss, when it comes to the appraisal on a company.
Yeah, let's say you were trying to advocate for your own appraisal in spite of all these things, right? And people might try to use this stuff as a way to like pay a lower valuation because they're still trying to buy your company, but they're just trying to buy you on the super cheap, and they're going to say stuff. Somebody at Sonder's size has bumped into it all, right? They've bumped into regulations. They've bumped into COVID big time. They've bumped into all the problems like leases not renewing. And so what you have is when you are at scale like this, there's a natural attrition of losing leases, right? If you have a business that has 100 leases, you're going to lose some and you're going to be picking up some, right? So when you look at that in a vacuum, you will have a company that, say, has 3 years or 5 years of track record doing arbitrage. And they have this rate of growth within the company where, say, they are gaining 250 leases a year and they're losing 150 leases a year. So they're doing a lot of moving, right? But they're gaining more leases than they're losing. But losing leases is showing not to be a liability that causes the business to shrink because they have systems in which they're picking up more leases than they're losing, right? So they're still growing. And now the question is can they pick up more leases? Even if they're picking up exactly the same number of new leases as they were losing and they were actually at stasis, now the question is are they profitable while constantly moving furniture and stuff like that after their 2-year leases end, right? So if a company is growing still, adding more leases on, while also losing leases, they're basically just recognizing the inevitable that you will have landlords that won't renew you, but they're still running a business at, say, 20, 23, 25% net operating margins, even while moving out and moving into other places, right? So that's the argument that you just generally make when people are looking at lease terms, because it's not actually about any one specific lease. Like, you can almost like use the Big Short movie as an example. When they were selling all these mortgages, they weren't selling one mortgage, they were selling a bundle of mortgages, and that they had a rate of default like rolled into the thousands of mortgages you're buying, like you were going to have 13% default on all the mortgages, but the whole bundle, right, the whole 1,000 mortgage bundle was still worth a certain amount of money based on the fact that 87% would not default. So at scale, you're able to answer that problem. And then at scale also, there's the inevitability that you'll run into negative legislation. And if they have a track record of not losing money when they get hit by negative legislation, which they've probably had to prove their point in different cities by then picking up business clientele and then flipping what was a short term into a 30-day only, or having to get a hotel license for the city and go through those changes, their ability to adapt and their track record of, the last 3 years going through stuff like that and still growing and maintaining profitability, the company as a whole being in 30 cities, even though they faced a challenge in 2-3 of those cities, if they still maintained overall profitability and shown that they can survive those types of setbacks because their C-suite is able to overcome those things, then that's something that they can just say, it's an inevitable part of the industry, but we're one of the best in the industry and we handle it, right? So you still then just point the numbers, you still point the valuation towards the growth, the overall profitability. And then, I guess an investor might go, well, I'm afraid the whole United States is going to ban short-term rentals or something, but that is a really far-fetched, claim. So I think at scale...
And a pandemic to add to that.
And you know what Sonder did with the pandemic? Is they had written into their leases recession triggers. They are sitting on 3 months of free rent that they wrote a letter to all their major buildings and said, hey, please review the lease that you signed. You owe us 3 months of rent for free. And that's how they survived, is they had these recession triggers that invoked free rent. Genius move on their part.
Yeah, I can add here because I actually purchased a business during COVID. These are things that we thought about extensively, and especially with my involvement in regulations around the world, that's definitely something I thought about. And one thing, and it all depends. This could be because again, I'm coming from the buyer's standpoint, but if you're a seller and you want the best price and you want to basically not avoid like them bringing those things up, or basically have some sort of assurance for them, if you're comfortable with it, you can do something that's called seller financing, which is very popular in business purchases, even outside of the short-term rental space. And basically what that means is you are not getting paid a lump sum up front, you're getting paid a certain down payment, but you're getting either a higher price or you're getting a premium price because you're extending the payments out over a certain period of time. And then there's contingencies in place where if there is a ban in the city and it's confirmed that you can't operate, then there's some sort of adjustment that's made. But that's a good way to get the maximum price for your business without having them try and cut your price down due to possibilities that either could or could not happen.
Yeah, 100%. So now you're basically making a gamble on whether or not that city that you're in, regulations are going to stay in your favor through the term at which they're paying off the purchase.
Right.
That's cool. That's super cool. So Mac, you were the one that kind of initially proposed the question. You have any thoughts?
I'm just curious. It's something I've totally lost my train of thought. I think in my experience, it's like, to add to what Sonder did, I mean, how much money did they raise as well to give them that runway they needed for that period of time where I don't know if all the moderators up here are, have that backing. I know I did it. I bootstrapped, and when I went through the pandemic, I'm like, what are my options here? As I mentioned, Seattle, we had the seasonality. It's been typically pretty difficult. I had been paying myself for the past, 4 years, and the option is take out a loan or to take money out of my savings and lend to the company or negotiate with these landlords. Unfortunately, I didn't have these things that Sonder has. I don't have a VC-backed company. Mm-hmm. I didn't, know exactly what to do. I'm not like trying to cry about it. I'm just kind of saying my options were a little bit more limited than say a Sonder due to, and I think most of us feel like that too. Like we didn't have someone to come in and dump all this money and to bail us out, ride out the storm. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, Sonder had like 5,000 doors by the time COVID happened, and they had like, I think during COVID they raised another round of money to total like $400 million in money that they raised, right? That's a lot of money. And just like you, I've bootstrapped it the whole way too, right? Like I started with $4,000 like in 2014, my whole story, and snowballed money that we made from Airbnbs into more Airbnbs, and we've just bootstrapped it. I fortunately, do most of my business in Texas, so Texas bounced back fast enough that it funded my Philadelphia. Like Philadelphia lost some money, but overall we did fine because Texas was making enough money to bankroll Philly, and that's kind of how we got through it. So Norman, you're flashing that mic. Are you clapping, or you got something to say?
It was both, honestly. But I guess my question is, considering that Sonder, has that in your leases, and I've known about that for a while, but I was always wondering, like, how does that contribute to the amount of leases they're losing? If that makes sense, every landlord probably isn't going to like that. So I mean, I pictured that would probably lead to them getting like non-renewals or stuff like that.
Well, so for them, I guess the concept of them getting non-renewals would based on how well they do with their buildings, right? So like Haley said earlier, she's got a manager that loves her so much that like that manager moved to a new building, new city, offered her 10 leases, right? That woman will renew her leases, right? There's another building that 2 months in, their first impression, they didn't like us on our 2-year-long lease. And they're like, hey, just so you know, the 2 months in, they're like, we're going to non-renew your leases. We're giving you 22-month notice. But then COVID hit. And then we really tightened up at the building and everything was going well. And they're like, hey, would you like more leases? I'm in the back of my brain, I'm like, they gave us non-renewal notices, right? And I'm like, sure, we'd love more leases, right? So the people change their tune. It's really based on how you do. And so Sonder, they could get too big for their own good and run a bad operation, and then they lose more leases. But I would imagine Sonder in their business model has key accounts representatives, people that it's their job to make sure properties are happy with their presence, right? And also Sonder, they switched their model where they only want entire buildings now. They don't want to mix. They don't want to mix in. That's one of their main changes that they made these last 2 years is they don't want to pick a floor in a building anymore. They want the whole building because dealing with the neighbors has tended to be a reason why they do lose leases.
Hashtag goals.
Sean, that also opened doors for others that were not, I don't want to use the term greedy, but as specific. I mean, look at what the Guild did in their expansion. And I know, Mac, you know who I'm talking about. I mean, if you guys know who the Bourbon Sherpa is, Eric Carrico.
Yeah.
His brother Brian is one of the founders of the Guild. And they've added 2,000 units since July, I believe it is. And a lot of it had to do with what Sonder was doing, and then that left opportunities for the Guild to slide in multiple markets.
Yeah, and they raised $25 million during COVID. And I actually am friends with the guy that headed the syndication for their fundraise. And yeah, it's beautiful what they did. It's awesome.
And other market players that have exited out the market have made a giant hole in opportunity for hosts like ourselves. When Stay Alfred it went bankrupt, and then you have Lyric, who really transitioned away from their units into their wheelhouse software. The demand for travel and demand has only probably changed and gone up simply because the habits and behaviors of people are now changing. The normal that we used to know doesn't really exist anymore. We're going to go into a new normal. Companies that were reluctant to do remote work were forced into having remote work. People were forced into using Zoom, phone calls, voice over IP solutions, and making sure that accommodations can be made mobile. There's some jobs, unfortunately, they're going to go away. They're never coming back. But there's going to be a new whole type of economy that's going to be probably more transient. So it's now going to be an opportunity for us as all and people getting into the business where we're going to really be able to make a mark on the next 10 years of the future of real estate's about to change.
So Brian and Sean, I want to pose a question to you. And Sean, I don't want to take over the Q&A, but
Do you
I
think?
heard Brian say something, and Stay Alfred left a huge vacancy, right? And I'm very familiar with what happened with Stay Alfred, going bankrupt, going away during COVID. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a great market for arbitrage, great market for management, co-hosting. I don't do that, but how would somebody go to a Stay Alfred building like the 505 in downtown Nashville that I think had like 400 units in it, maybe it was 300. Tony Giarratano's the owner, new management company there, had a bad experience. Tony now hates arbitrage. How do you get into a place like that in today's climate?
So you would have wanted to done it a long time ago, right when it was fresh, because they've probably moved the furniture out of the units already. The stuff's probably in storage. God forbid the stuff is still in there and they just have a bunch of empty units, because that would be terrible for them. I'd hate to be that building owner. But what you want to do is you want to create an effective transfer of power in a reassuring way with the building. So first off, you have to give a compelling reason why you're not Stay Alfred. So here in Dallas, we can call a building and say, hey, I heard that Stay Alfred just bailed on all their leases. I'm really sorry to hear that. We own a corporate housing company headquartered out of Dallas. We are cash strong and we're growing through COVID. And we would like to present a unique opportunity to you in light of the fact that you just lost a major tenant. And then hopefully they say, I'm listening, right? And then one of the main things that will happen is since this furniture is in there, they won't have time to put maintenance in there to fix some stuff up. This is something that we actually went through, is we signed an as-is lease. So the as-is lease basically said we would move into the unit with the furniture in it. They didn't have to do anything to the property. We would accept it in the condition that it is. So any repairs that need to get done, our lease is still activated before repairs are done. We can, tell them, hey, these repairs need to get done, and they'll get to it. But they're not like suffering downtime waiting for that to happen. And then we basically parlayed any damages that we discover would go into the condition form, and they would address it down the road, but not hold us responsible for the repairs. But we would still accept the unit as is. And so doing that,
photo documentation and written comments on those photos.
Yeah, and so Haley actually had to go through all these buildings and actually get the whole as-is condition thing done. But then, of course, that gives the landlord what they needed. So we took a whole floor at the Statler. Well, not a whole floor. There's a couple units we didn't take at the Statler. But basically, we accepted nearly a whole floor of furnished units from Stay Alfred at the Statler. And that was really the main thing that had to get done, was the as-is condition form. And, of course, you have to convince them that you're a company worth working with, and give them a reason why you're not going to do the same thing that Stay Alfred did.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I would do exactly all that you said, Sean. That's like pretty much. I also would just also kind of add some flexibility to the picture, and to paint a picture that I would love all 40 of Stay Alfred's pictures, but we're totally happy. Also, just starting out with one to establish the rapport and kind of start out small, because you know that they've been burned, and let them know that ideally you can kind of grow with them as they become more and more comfortable. Like if they give you one unit, do you think they're going to be like shit out of luck compared to 40 units or 50? So that's one way to look at the situation. Plus, also maybe just check, are there other corporate housing companies that have moved in to a property like that, and then kind of do your research, and figure out, is there anybody adding 2, 4, 6 units right now? Because that left a huge void, I'm assuming. So I don't know how long it took them to fill up the 40 or 50 units, but that's just kind of my thought on, you don't necessarily need to hit a grand slam and take all the units that are vacant by Stay Alfred, but at least start, plant a seed and get one, and then they'll like you, establish that rapport ideally, and then get more as you go. That's my approach, and that's how I scaled at all the properties that I had originally. They didn't just give me 10 on day one. I just kind of worked at it, showed up every month or so to pay the rent, and then establish the rapport with the leasing office and say, how's everything going? How's your vacancy? How's your occupancy? And kind of just what companies are doing business, etc. Kind of those questions that give you all the good information on how the market is, plus that property.
Yeah, and in Mac's case, if you pick up a unit or two, just try to jam a multi-month tenant in there right away, right? Get the best first impression ever. And they're like, yeah, how many would you like? You could take them all, right? Now the only issue is the time sensitivity of this, right? If a tenant defaults on 50 doors and you offer to start with 1 or 2 and then grow as they're comfortable, 2 or 3 months later, they probably are looking to like let go of that inventory. And my only worry, I guess, is if I took too long, if I wouldn't get access to the doors because they've already made a decision on them, right? So in the Stay Alfred case, I'd rather strike while the iron's hot and take them all right away, right? Because they're already furnished. I'd say I'll take this all today, right? We'll sign a 2-year-long lease. We still want our 8 weeks free as per usual, thank you, but we will take them all and start operating them. You can know at least that they got handed off. And so we actually got 2 months of rent for free at a building that Stay Alfred defaulted. So landlords still say yes to that, which is nice.
Sean did it. I couldn't do it because Seattle, you can't inherit like legacy grandfathered in.
Yeah, for you,
the ordinance.
Seattle's regulations, man.
I'm looking at the situation like Sean did, but I can't do anything other than 30-day stays and up. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense right now.
Yeah, Seattle's regulations. Seattle's regulations are super tough. It's one of the hardest cities to scale in. Right? You can have 1 unit or 2, and in order to get multiple, you have to double stack anonymous LLCs so that way you can secretly have them all, but you have an LLC that's owned by an anonymous LLC, and you have to have a representative that's got a different name in it. And so all the that was a couple years ago when we were looking at Seattle. I was like, gosh, do I really have to do all this stuff just to try to get a few units? And yeah.
A hack I would just add is the Y Hotel, for example. They have 60 units in Seattle that they got this temporary permit from the city. I'm like, holy shit, how'd they do that at this nice new building? And the pandemic kind of crushed their dreams in Seattle. But anyway, they use representative inventory through their PMS, so it really looks like they only have 2 listings on all 50 doors that they have. So there's technology that you can kind of use, which I had to actually implement to kind of deal with the leases that were in this gray area. So I basically used I had 4 listings that had about 30 rooms connected. So meaning you're just kind of playing Tetris behind the scene with who goes where.
Yeah.
So if your inventory looks the same, like they do, like ours do, Sean, then that's something that you could do in that situation. I'm not saying you should, but I'm just saying it's something you can do.
You can make it work, but man, that is a lot of work. That is a lot of work. So hats off to you for being able to build something in Seattle, because that is particularly difficult, right? It's one of the cities that I would not want that headache. So
I watched Barsala, dude. If you're familiar with Barsala, they're in some of your cities, so they're just killing it when I was starting. So I don't need to share that story, but yeah, that's kind of one of the companies that I was they're adding 5 units a month. How the hell do you do that? And so that was who I aspired to kind of model my business after.
Add 5 units in a month. Haley added 10 in a day.
Hey, it's still impressive out there for sure.
In Seattle, totally is. Well, guys, we're pushing almost into the 2-hour mark. And of course, these rooms can run forever. These things are the lifeblood, just ever sustaining. We've got 2 people I brought up that I'm going to let them ask some questions, and then we're going to say our goodbyes, do some outros. So, Darshan and Anthony, you guys have been super patient. Darshan first and Anthony second. How can we help you?
Hey, Sean. So I hope it's okay to disagree on a couple things.
Go for it.
I come from the hotel space. I've owned 13 properties. I trade a lot of my properties. And I can tell you, one of the things you mentioned earlier, and I've heard this before with quick service food, someone mentioned McDonald's and things like that, and you'd mentioned look at the hotels. Just being in the hotel space, I will say be very, very careful of doing that. That's not always your best indicator of there being potential, only because industry dynamics change, companies move. We look at maybe a different segment and demographic of people. So I would just say be very, very careful. I can't tell you the number of hotels that have gone bankrupt because of those shifts in dynamics. And also, sometimes it's bad operations and other things, but a lot of times it's also things that has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, again, industry shifts and wary about how you know, where you put down your funds and, you know, what you invest in.
Sure. So for everybody, just for context, I made a reference earlier that I tell people to look for new construction hotels where a 4-star is breaking ground somewhere as a sign that they've done their market research and they think this is going to be a good spot. So Darshan is a professional in the hotel industry, and he's saying that it should not be your standalone point for picking an apartment, right? That like you just don't just show up next to a hotel and expect it to be a guaranteed shot. That's what you're saying, right, Darshan?
Yeah, and I'm also saying that a lot of times the hotel companies get it wrong. You know, like the franchises, you know, they look here, you have to understand what their incentives are. Their incentives are, give me another box and let me put my flag on it, right? Because every time I put another flag on a box, I get fees, right? I take 13 to 17% of top line from you, you know, just to put, you know, my branding on your building. So, you know, like that's what they're looking for. You know, in some markets, they didn't even, you know, like if you look at Orlando, for instance, you'll have 3 Comfort Inns on the same street, for instance. You'll have 5 Holiday Inn Expresses, you know, like within a 5-mile radius. And there's something called an area of protection, which, sure, they'll put out a letter saying, hey, someone wants to build something in your market, but then all these other guys come in next to you, so you're all, you know, feeding into the same res system. So that's a different dynamic that happens. But there's lots of reasons why, what I'm trying to say is there's lots of reasons why a franchise will put something there. And if you're using that as your metric to build something, you could be very, very quickly dismayed, you know, by your thesis on why something's going to work, because it may very well not. For very, you know, for a lot of reasons you don't understand, because not being in the industry, it would be foreign to you, you know. So just be careful is what I'm saying.
Yeah. What you said reminds me of co-hosting, right? Where somebody gets 13% of top line just to have their brand on it, right? There's professional co-hosts that represent luxury properties, and they take a percentage of revenue to manage somebody's luxury property as a vacation rental. It sounds like the same motivation, right? They don't necessarily care if the building is inherently profitable because their 13% is guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they've used a lot of similar models, because the model does work. I mean, generally, the franchises are the ones that make the most money. Whether, you know, your bottom line is, you know, net positive or net negative, it doesn't matter to them. They're taking off the top line. So, and I just want to give you guys an opportunity, though. So, something to look for right now would be independent boutique hotels. And it sounded like, Sean, you had gone, or, you know, after that model. So I think the Statler's a Curio property. I don't know that market as well. I'm in the Northeast, New York. So I would tell you, you know, look for independent boutique hotels, because it is a very inexpensive way. If you've got a management company, or you've got, you know, like some sort of arrangement that you can create. Right now, I mean, we are all like, we're sucking wind right now, and nothing's working that great. Yes, we're seeing a little bit of an increase over the last month or so, but I would look at, you know, a similar thing to what Sean did is, you know, ask to take a portion of the building and say, hey, you know, like, can I rent these things out, you know, for you, and that, you know, you have it's ready. We're more than eager, you know, to get these things moved. It's inventory that's out there, and it's sitting, and it's just a matter of someone activating them. So,
are you talking about hotels, renting hotels, or just a?
Yeah, I'm saying maybe you don't take the whole entire thing, but take a floor. You know, like get some sort of, you know, like extended occupancy. You know, and you're right. I mean, New York has a similar thing where if you go, I think this is what you're referring to, Mac, was. We have the same things where tenancy laws, you know, don't allow us. If someone's non-paying after 30 days, they can just stay. Like, I had to pay something like $20,000 to get someone out that hadn't paid for 6 months. So, you know, and I had to go to court, and then I ended up paying that guy because, you know, like, you know, we put a lock on his door, and it was my general manager who did the wrong thing. But my point is, you know, we didn't ask him to do that, but whatever happens, I mean, you have less, you know, it's very pro-tenant. So you have to, you know, also, you know, be in the right markets. But if you can, you know, if you can do short-term stays, like, you know, I think boutique hotels, non-franchised hotels, where there's no obligation to a franchise, And there's, you know, you don't have to give the royalty fees and all that kind of stuff to the franchise. I think independent boutique hotel owners would be more than happy for you to fill their rooms. I'll just give you an example of this, just really quick, and I want to hear what you have to say. You know, I went to a hotel conference in Chicago a few years ago, and one of the main people from Expedia was speaking, and they said, never go to war with your channels. And that's always something that has stuck with me. If you can source me revenue, I'm your friend. There's no way I'm going to mess with you. Even if you do the worst things to me. You know, Expedia takes 30%, and we have to give them the lowest rates. And we give that to them because we know that they're the biggest bookers, and we need their business. But that's the hotel industry as a whole. We don't like it. We hate it. You know, we talk about booking brand.com versus going to online travel agents. But, you know, I would rather give, you know, the 10% standard commission to one of you guys and not get, you know, like destroyed by these OTAs, you know, and everyone wins. Because that's the standard travel agent commission, is 10%.
So you're seeing companies come out and reach out to boutique hotels?
No, I'm saying it's not happening enough. If you guys are looking for the opportunity, you know, where we don't have to fight each other for the same business, like if you're a management company and you're in both spaces, you know, like, or if you're just on the short-term rental side, look at hotels, because we need the rooms right now. You know, we need you guys to move product. So, you know, like that, I would just tell you, you know, I don't think it gets, like, I think we talked about, oh, we're going to beat them. We're going to beat the hotel. You know, like, we're going to take their business away. You haven't affected mine yet. I'm not scared of the Saunders and those guys. Like, I'm scared of when hotel companies like Marriott come in and there's a standard to the hotel room and a consistency to product. That's what I'm scared of. I'm not, you know, think you though is we don't have to fight each other. We don't have to compete against each other. Maybe we help each other. And, you know, maybe you're moving rooms. Maybe you're moving hotel rooms, you know, and product.
Hey, Sean, I just messaged you. I am trying to get into the boutique hotel space. I would love to connect with you and kind of see if we can have some synergies that way.
Sure, John. I'm here for you, whatever you need.
Awesome.
I'm in the Northeast as well, Deshaun. I'm happy to connect. We've got 2 boutique hotels. But I interviewed a guy on my podcast, Braden Ross. We've done some Clubhouse rooms, and he's basically carved out that niche for himself. And it's super interesting that he basically just targets hotels and partners with them to fill their rooms, and he just takes a cut. Like, he doesn't do the guest communication or anything. He's essentially just a marketing engine for these hotels, and he's got like 4,000 doors now. It's crazy.
Honestly, it is such a space. And look, it's going to come back roaring, and you want to have your, you know, be entrenched before that happens, because everyone's going to go back to their traditional channels. But if you get an inroad right now with boutique hotels, see, here, let me explain. Generally, you can expect, the reason why people go to go to franchise hotels is because you get more financing against them, right? I don't know how it works with short-term rentals, right? Because it's not consistent income. Like, I can't guarantee, you know, the income, right? And unless if you've got some history over, you know, a few years, maybe 3 years, usually the banks are looking at 3 years of P&Ls, right? But for hotels, that's why people go to the franchises. The reason why people come away from the franchises is because, you know, they don't want to pay all the fees. But then what happens is your loan to value goes down. So whereas I would get 65 to 75% in boom times, I get, you know, maybe 55, 60%, you know, financing if I'm a great sponsor and run a good property in good times. But, you know, when you go to a boutique, you're likely to get, right now, maybe you're lucky to get 30 to 50% financing if they'll even, you know, let you in the door. So, you know, like right now, I'll just tell you on that, I mean, you know, a lot of us need to cover our mortgages. We need to, you know, I don't have debt on my properties currently. That's what helped me survive. But, you know, I think, you know, for those who are out there and, you know, suffering and want a hand, and if you're, you know, altruistic about it, you know, this is a good time for you to, like, you know, win-win, you know, make some commissions off of selling these rooms and getting them, you know, moved, because literally it's dead inventory every day. I mean, right now, typically you're seeing 30 to 50% when the market is typically, the historical average of hotels is 60% occupancy. And that would be, you know, you could be profitable at 60%, which sounds funny to most people, but it's true. Like 60, 65% is is typically where you are. So if you're running 75, 80%, you're great. Now, if you can fill those extra rooms, I mean, that would be amazing for so many people, and it would keep them in business and, put food on their families' plates as well as their employees. So,
are there terms that you're seeing that are kind of make sense for both parties? Like, I don't want to just, if I set up the furniture to make it look more like my model, because I think your boutique hotel looks kind of outdated, and I want this to make sense.
Sure.
I want to be here for 2 years at least.
Sure. So it's a great question, Mac. And I think what you need to do, one, I mean, there's no capital, right? So if you're going to do that, most of the struggling hotels are not going to be okay with that just because they can't afford to do that at this stage. The second part of that is furniture, fixture, and equipment are the most expensive part of a hotel. Like, it can be millions of dollars, to put into a room, an investment. So what I'll tell you on that note is you need to ask the management and the ownership. And I would also be careful because there is something, sorry, these are the streets of Manhattan. It's going kind of crazy. It's a warm day finally. Sorry for the noise. But, I would have discussions with the ownership and management, and I would also be careful because what may appear as an independent boutique hotel may actually be soft branded with the franchise. So Choice Hotels, has a Sen collection, or even the Statler, which you were talking about, Sean, has Curio and other products, right? These are soft branded boutique inspired hotels, but they do have a flag on them. So be careful of that. Make sure that they're completely independent, like non-affiliated to franchise hotels. And like the franchise will oftentimes dictate what you can do with that room. So just be careful of that. But I would say, again, it's a discussion. If you can prove out that, hey, I can sell more rooms, then yeah, I mean, maybe it's a trial, like try it for a week and see what happens. Try it for a month and see what happens. But, at this point, I don't think people mind because they've got, if they're 40, 50% occupancy, they've got half of the hotel or more to sell. So try, that's all you can do. And every management company will give you a different, or ownership group to give you a different answer.
The only thing I'm trying to figure out is the logistic of how do I tie into their availability, to be honest.
So availability is, through the PMS, right? Just like short-term rental, all that kind of stuff. You would need to get access to some portion of that to allocate rooms, right, on a daily basis. The PMS is the brains of any hotel. But you need to have some sort. I don't know that you'll be able to get all of the access because
I just need an API to the availability.
Yeah, so I think there would be, I think there's like add-ons and things that you could build into the technology, depending on what it is. I mean,
I guarantee my boy Brian up there can figure that out. He's my tech guy.
I mean, like Opera is a little bit more, like detailed and heavy, and I don't know that they'll let outsiders come in, but if it's a boutique and they use, there's a lot of add-ons that are needed. For instance, we have a boutique hotel just outside of New York Airport, and we needed add-ons for our bar revenue, our banquet spaces, our restaurant space, and those were all, and then we created a coffee bar and all this kind of stuff. So, we needed an add-on, and we don't use one of the major systems like Opera, which is part of Oracle. We used, a smaller system that's, was willing to make changes. So a lot of boutiques will have systems like that are more changeable. But you need to get the permissions of the PMS provider to be able to get into that.
Got a quick question for you, Don. First, do you know, are you connected with boutique hotel owners in Detroit, Michigan, or Chicago? I think you said you did some stuff in Chicago.
No, I went to a hotel conference out there. Why do you ask about Detroit? I mean, I like the market, but
here's the thing: Detroit is all about boutique hotels, and that's actually funny. Sean and I got on a call. This was probably 2019, talking about our best strategies, and we focused on larger properties to avoid the boutique hotels because they're generally small studio, one bedrooms, like traditional hotels. But that's like what Detroit is all about because the hotel industry did not support Detroit during the bankruptcy and all of this stuff going on. So when Detroit was making its comeback, there was a void there. The big guys weren't there in large numbers. So boutique hotels, they started making a killing. And there's a specific boutique hotel called the Inn on Ferry Street, and we were actually looking at doing a deal with them. This is before COVID, and we were just trying to figure them out. But we had been eyeing them because they were like a perfect mix, where they're a boutique hotel, but they're really a large set of homes. And I'm talking beautiful, like historical, like 3,000, 5,000 square foot homes. And like, they're really great for weddings. They're in one of the best areas in Detroit. It's just a winner. And during COVID, they've just been shut down this whole time. And I just haven't had time. I was doing a deal in Chicago, a big deal over there. So I just didn't have time to, really do the research and figure out what they're doing. But they've been shut down since COVID started. And all I know is that they're a part of this group called Historic Hotels of America.
Yeah, they get tax credits on that kind of stuff too. So it's actually a really interesting play. So look, here's the thing. Right? I think
but yeah,
the guy from Rocket Mortgage or something, that guy built up a lot of Detroit, right? Like, and then there's some areas of Detroit that
your sound's a little low, Darshan.
Can you guys hear me again, or?
It's better.
Let me just try to switch. Sorry.
Car audio?
Yeah, car audio. Can you guys hear me okay, or?
It's sounding a little bit closer to your microphone, but you're kind of far away from your microphone due to the car audio.
Is this any better, guys? Sorry.
I can understand you, but it is a little lower. By the way, everybody, he's talking about Dan Gilbert. That's the owner of Rocket Mortgage and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and invested huge in Detroit, billions, or not billions. He's a billionaire, but he's invested tons and tons of money. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that I remember there's 4 major hotel conferences. If you guys want some insight, I mean, they're a little expensive to go to, but there's 4 major ones in the United States, which is Alice, which is in LA, the NYU Hospitality Conference, which is highly institutional, a couple of regional ones like Hunter, which is the Southeast, and then there's one called the Lodging Conference. And I remember a few years ago, I think it was actually during the GFC, one of the analysts up on the stage was saying that it costs you more to buy a car. The average car costs less than a home in Detroit. And I think if you can
I can confirm that.
if you can hit those valleys, right? Like, yeah, I mean, it's time value of money, right? Over time, it's basic finance, right? Like, value will grow. And I think that exists with hotels. The problem with hotels, okay, and I will say, I think short-term rental is like, it's over the last 10 years, it's really blossomed into this new thing, and there's definitely been the disruption. But I do like, how financeable is it? And I think that becomes the big question for capital, right? Is that like the way I always talk about hotels, and it's similar, but I think there's more of a system to it, and there's a longer history to it. So I think there's more trust in it, but from a banker's perspective. But the way bankers would look at a hotel is this, and this is how you as an investor should look at it too, is it's like a gas station. You don't know who's going to come in the next day. So, right, like, I don't know. I have a variable tenancy, right? I have a variable cash flow. So how then do I make the proper assumptions to guess right to bank you? And, I mean, if a banker who has the most capital in it is looking at you that way, you as an investor should look at it that way, is my perspective. It's always been my perspective. But, yeah, so I would just say with hotels versus multifamily, for instance, multifamily safe. You know what's going to come in. And it's easier, right? That's why banks finance multifamily through COVID. You could get capital. But, with hotels, if you're not in and out,
or if you don't have enough of a reserve to be able to weather the storm, i.e. you don't have debt or you have the ability to cover your debt service, I mean, you're SOL. So, you know, like, that's the thing with hotels. But, you know, again, I'll say this as well, just, you know, as we were talking about, and one of the, just to also break is that, hey, you know, like, all hotels are going to die off because short-term rentals are now in the, no, I mean, honestly, before COVID, I had over 20% year-over-year gains on all my properties. So, you know, like, it didn't affect me when it was supposedly, like, you know, coming into our space and this and that. Like, I didn't see it. So, I you know, again, I think there's a space and a demographic for each and every type. You know, like, it's not to say one is better or worse. It's just everyone wants something different. I think you've just diversified the pool, and we're all, like, yes, pulling from the same share, but potentially. But, you know, I would almost argue that they're different shares.
This has been super fun, Darshan. You've got a lot to say, and it's been an honor having you up here. So I have a feeling that
next time I raise my hand, don't make me wait 20 minutes. Then I'll get it in sooner. I promise.
Hey, man, you know, like, I was letting people go on their tangents, you know, just letting things happen, and, you know, I'm glad I brought you up because I think this has been highly valuable. So I really do appreciate your expertise and your candor. And I imagine that there's going to be a few of us up here, and probably plenty of people in the audience that are be bugging you in your DMs. So I hope you're ready for a late night answering messages.
Well, I hope you bug me, Sean. Thank you very much for letting me on. I appreciate it.
I will certainly bug you. You have my word. This has been super fun. So, yeah. So with that said, guys, sorry, I let me turn my mic down. I turned the gain up since your car audio. I wanted everybody on YouTube to be able to hear. By the way, Darshan, everybody on YouTube loved what you had to say. The chat box went nuts. They're like, no way, this is cheaper than rental arbitrage. I'm like, yeah, this sounds like it's free. Actually, you just pick up somebody else's hotel rooms. So let me just let everybody know where they're at. We're going to close out this room. We've got one last person to ask a question, then we're going to shut this bad boy down. You're in the Airbnb Automated Club, and I'm Sean Rakijich, your host from the Airbnb Automated YouTube channel. Click the green box to the right of Airbnb Automated to follow the club because these moderators have stuff to say nearly every day. We run rooms every Wednesday, and then sometimes we do some random stuff. And so today we've been talking about real estate myth busting. We've been talking about some really cool topics, a lot of business travel stuff, you know, some scaling, some growth, and then, of course, the hotel thing, which has been super fun. What a hack. So to last but not least, of course, Anthony, you're going to be the last question or input for this room. So what's on your mind? How can we help you?
Hey, what's going on, Sean? Appreciate you inviting me up to the stage. Really quickly, I just want to say thank you to the moderators. Taking time, sharing experience. I know folks appreciate it, I know I do. So I'll treat this as a lightning round. I just have two quick questions, take 60 seconds and a quick comment. The first thing I think could be a benefit for a lot of folks in the room. How are you guys structuring your insurance? Which insurance companies are you using? How are you protecting yourself from liabilities there? If folks could jump in on that.
We might all agree. Who wants to talk about their specific insurance structures for their business?
Yeah, we use a vacation rental software, a vacation rental like insurance company called Prosper. And the reason why their policy is a little bit higher than probably a lot of other solutions, but what we like about it is it has liability policy. So we get up to $1 million of liability coverage, also covers personal coverage, covers loss of income, covers squatters, it covers a whole bunch of different other things. And it's also been what we've done from Greystar. Greystar's been focusing on making sure more companies have that if you go that route for corporate housing. So it's just something to keep in mind. Some apartment complexes are making it mandatory to have a liability policy, not just a renter's insurance policy. So it's kind of a CYA for our business, especially when those unavoidable things happen, like Texas decides to cut off the power, and instead of doing rolling blackouts, they just black out most of the state. So it's just things like that we look for, like loss of income. We had coverage for that and other pieces. So it goes a long way for our connections with our property.
Okay, I appreciate that, Brian. And yeah, I heard of Prosper. And didn't get that level of detail before, though, so I appreciate that. And are any of the moderators using another company other than Prosper?
Yeah, so we have a general liability policy for one of our master leases, so they want us to have $3 million general liability. So it's like a blanket annual policy. It's like $15,000 a year, but it's kind of like this unlimited, like for a few buildings kind of thing. State Farm also has a product for short-term rentals, but they will not add a landlord as an additional insured. Proper will. State Farm won't.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that. The next quick question. I own a few properties in the Baltimore and DC areas, looking to expand the short-term rental side to other states. As no moderators are in the number of states. As you made that move, or even before, how did you structure your business there? Did you get an individual LLC or make an individual company for each property in each state? Or did you group 5 and when you went to another state, start another holding company? Or how did you do that there? I'm just curious, folks' experience with that.
So I think, yeah, go for it, Michael.
I was just going to ask, just for clarification, which model? Because I think it's going to depend if you own properties versus master lease versus co-host.
Okay, I'm owning right now. Currently, I'm only an owner. I'm not in the arbitrage space.
Okay, so that does make a difference. So any properties that I own, I typically put.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little feedback there, Michael. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just had to mute you, Darshan, real quick. If I own the properties, I typically put them in their own LLC. For my co-hosting business, I have a separate LLC just for that. And we operate in a bunch of states. We just register with that state. So I don't need a separate LLC in each state that we're running properties. We just have to register with that state. But if I own an asset, I want to set up a separate LLC for each property, for me personally. And it'll depend, what your asset protection attorney will advise you. So this is just kind of how I'm doing it, but you definitely want to run it by your attorney. But that's just general asset protection.
Of course, no, and I appreciate that. So for the property, and we have the LLCs for the property, but for the short-term rental business as well, are you not, or are you not differentiating the two for your short-term?
So for the properties that we own, right? So there's 2 boutique hotels and I've got a house up in the mountains, right? Each of those has its own LLC. And then I have an LLC, like a business entity that is the operational entity for the co-hosting side of things. So I have four entities, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Appreciate that, Michael. Also appreciate the podcast tuned in. It's great there, great content there, so I appreciate that. And then the last quick question I had, I've done marketing for a small portfolio of AAA franchises, and I know that thing that gets customers come back in the door is the customer service, 100%. And I wanted to ask moderators, what are you doing for customer retention? Have you seen that? Some of y'all have been operating for a number of years. Are you seeing repeat customers? Are they reaching out to you? Are you keeping in contact with them? Email listservs, things of that nature. I just wanted to pick your brains on your experience with customer retention and how you're going above and beyond to give them good service, but then also get them coming back through the doors later on.
We get a lot of people that come back to our units. I laugh sometimes with the team because our VAs will just get. One of the things we did is we have text message communication, and so the majority of our guests throughout the duration of stay, they won't even message us on Airbnb. They'll message us as an SMS. I mean, we try to talk all those things through the channel because there's a very important reason you need to do that. And Sean alludes to that in a lot of his YouTube videos, especially when it comes to the claims process. But a lot of our guests, like I think last week I saw a text message come in. The guests had stayed with us 3 times and then was referring a friend and then asked us, could we call this friend to get their reservation? And so I think with text message communication, people feel so personal that we get so many return guests or so many people who refer other people to us and then have us reach out to them. But part of it is going to be the experience, right? If you don't give them an experience in which they feel like they can talk to you, et cetera, especially if something that they're not going to see you a lot of times because we're self-service. We don't really see our guests. Then if you don't give them a good experience, they won't even have a reason to do that. It doesn't matter how much marketing you send the world. So we're trying to find a way to make our communication more personal, and that's in turn for us. We don't send marketing messages out. We have all of their email address and contacts. We never even, during the pandemic, even had to even go think of doing an email because We had guests already reaching out to us, trying to book for 2 or 3 months, or trying to stay for a couple of weeks, or saying, I need to come back to town. And we ended up, probably after the rodeo had canceled in Houston, and that sent all of our bookings into a frenzy. Within a week, I think we made back about 90% of our bookings from just a lot of repeat guests who just hit us up out the blue. So that's kind of been our strategy, but not from a marketing aspect.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that, Brian.
To kind of add to it, because I'm sure, like, we all have a screening process for the bad guests. You also want your team to, you know, be really amazing at that. You also then want them to be really amazing at looking, while they're looking for the bad guests, to also be looking for the good guests. What company does this person work for? And then, you know, having a system, which we're adding HubSpot just for other reasons, owner acquisitions, to using HubSpot as CRM for that. I just, as a new tool that I use, on top of what Brian kind of said, that adding that personal touch, like, you won't typically see them and they won't typically see you through all the automated messaging. One thing, if you have that VIP, like, that comes through, you're like an executive from a company, which we do now, is Loom. I don't know if anyone here uses Loom for, like, working with their assistants, recording videos, but now, like, I didn't get great feedback. I didn't get any feedback, but the feedback that I did get from this executive was another booking. So he was staying with me. He's like, I want to come back. I have to leave for 15 days, but I want this unit, so lock it down for me when I get back. And I can't really say it was because of Loom videos, but I do know that I kind of put myself out there, and I think he knows that, you know, he can reach me or talk to me, you know, in any way. And you can send Loom links through text message as well. So it's just a great software that you can try out for free.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Mac. Appreciate that. And then lastly, really quickly, I just want to make a quick comment. I know I've heard, and I got in this room toward the tail end of this particular part of the conversation, but I just wanted to caution moderators. You know, I've heard this in a couple of real estate rooms when we get into the discussion of short-term versus long-term. And personally, I just think that it's good to be diversified, even within the real estate. You know, the pandemic happened. I have a few long-term rentals, just a short-term rental. I can tell you off the bat, of course, the revenue 3x, you know, what my long-terms are producing. But when the pandemic hit, you know, I had 100% occupancy in my long-term. I had a stable check coming in there. You know, a year or two from now, whenever we get on a recession, rents can be down and short-term will be there, because I'm building that part of my business, and, you know, I can lean on that then. So I just want to get out of I hope we as a community can get out of the this or that, which one is better. You know, they both can be beneficial, and can help you out. So I just wanted to leave that comment. Thank y'all for your time, and have a good day.
Anthony, I just wanted to add, you know, you don't know what you need in insurance until something really bad happens, and you don't realize the value of it until something bad happens. So something to consider doing is talking to public adjusters and ask them what the coverage you're going to need if something goes bad, because they're going to see it all and they're going to know exactly what happens. So if you can get someone to give you the time, they're usually going to be the best ones that guide you to who are the best insurers that give you the best coverage as well.
That's a good point, Darshan. I appreciate that. Brother.
Well, guys, Anthony did bring up kind of a point right at the end, and we should, you know, acknowledge it, that if you've got a piece of real estate, you know, whether or not you own it isn't the argument. There's a spectrum of ways that you can fill that place up, right? You've got long-term tenants. You've got corporate housing, which is like a business long-term tenant. You've got short-term housing, which you can fill up with direct bookings, Airbnb, VRBO, you know, all sorts of different ways. You even got peer space now. You can rent out your place by the hour. You have a front door and some walls, furniture or not. There are ways to get that building full, and you should not ever take one of them off the table. There might come a time where you need a long-term tenant. Like, for example, in Mac's situation or somebody like in a city like Chicago, it might be worth the squeeze to just put somebody in for 4 months during the slowest season because it mitigates your risk. So you can give somebody a formal lease, you know, in the middle of a winter if you can't get like a business client to pay you a bunch of money sometimes. So with Anthony, like even if you're a short-term rental, you should consider long-term solutions to some of your biggest problems if you can't solve the problem with your regular short-term product. So keep your eyes open, never be too narrow-minded. And of course, the goal of this room today was to challenge assumptions and to bust the myths that we've been told. And maybe the last myth for the room is that there's one way to skin a cat in real estate, right? Specialize and do really good at one thing, right? Maybe that's not the way. Stay diversified, stay open-minded, and success will come to those who can adapt and pivot. And COVID has really proven that adapting and pivoting is important even in real estate. So I would like to give everybody who is here as a moderator in this room an opportunity to say goodbye to the room. And I would like you all to follow these moderators. Like seriously, click on their faces and hit follow, and then hit the bell next to their face. So that way, next time that they're in a room, if you like what they have to say, you can hear more of what they have to say. So from the bottom up, let us give some parting words, starting with you, Theron. Say something motivational if you'd like, or give people some extra advice and tell them where they can find you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. And this was a great room. Just for anybody who doesn't know, I'll keep this short. I almost lost my business, my short-term rental business in Detroit. And I went from almost losing my business to getting the ban pulled, being at the table with city council, and then growing my business to the 7-figure level, all advocacy. And I say that not just to talk about myself. I say this because regulations are one of the number one things that people need to just understand and focus on before investing. And of course, everything else is important too. And you guys can do it too. And with regards to this room, there's so much great knowledge that was shared. And there's some tips that I'm definitely writing down. There's people that I'm going to be hitting up. So I hope everybody got a lot of great information. And if you need to reach out to me about anything regulations or advocacy related, my number is in my profile. Follow me. And if you want to look more into regulations related stuff, just type Airbnb regulations in Clubhouse, and you can find our club, Airbnb and real estate regulations. Thanks again, Sean. This was a great room.
Great to have you. Thank you so much. And plug your nonprofit next time.
I know, there's so many. We work with so many. But yes, we are doing a fundraiser, and we're doing this for nonprofits in Chicago, in Detroit, and also we're going to be doing stuff for Seattle as well. I'm going to let Matt get to that. I know, I know he's got some stuff planned there.
Cool. Thank you, Theron. Michael, hit it.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Another awesome room. Always love being in these rooms with all these amazing moderators. I always say, like Theron said, make sure you guys are taking notes, but make sure you take action on this information. All these amazing moderators are very seasoned, very experienced, and they're sharing their knowledge and their tips, tools, and strategies with you. The best thing that you can do to say thank you to them is, yes, follow them, but take action on it, and then come back in these rooms and let us know, how did it go when you implemented these strategies. So, real quick plug, I'm the host of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. You can find us on iTunes and Spotify and everywhere else that podcasts are promoted now. Tomorrow, actually, I'm going to do a free live webinar. I haven't done one of these in like a year. I've been going pretty crazy on Clubhouse, but sometimes it's nice to just get on video and connect and show you guys some case studies and numbers. So it's going to be a free training tomorrow. You can find the link in my bio. It's at 1 o'clock Eastern, and it'll be some fun. So thanks again for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
Wonderful to have you, and I'll get on your podcast one of these days if you'll have me, of course.
I'm gonna DM you the link, buddy. You gotta get you on there.
Cool. Yeah, I can't believe it's been all this time. Noble King, what's up?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Sean. Again, certainly enjoy being on stage with you and all of the other moderators. My name is Noble Crawford, co-founder of a hospitality brand based in Texas for the past 4 years. And right now, the way we kind of help folks is a couple of different ways. One is through the Hospitality Cash Flow podcast, as well as the Hospitality Cash Flow Club that we run on Thursday evenings. And so I invite all of you to tap in with us there as we try to, have fun, bring some energy, and educate people at the same time. And Sean, hopefully I can get you in one of those rooms here pretty soon. But that's what we do. And again, happy to be here with you guys.
You just tell me where to be. Let's skip up.
Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. on that.
Tomorrow 7. All right, I will put that in my calendar. I will be there with my best church clothes on. John.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for bringing me up, and thank you, everyone. I learned a lot, especially about the hotel space, so I appreciate that. My name is John. I'm the founder of a hospitality brand in Honolulu, Hawaii, Ohana Stay. I think one thing that I would say is you can mix and match the various strategies in real estate. So you can put a short-term rental strategy in the BRRRR strategy, right? Or in multifamily thing. And so what Anthony said is exactly right. It's not one versus the other. You can actually start playing, how can I implement the short-term rental strategy within a traditional real estate investing strategy. So I think that was really, it was good that Anthony brought that up. The other thing that I just want to share is Sean, Ellie, and I have started a Tuesday Clubhouse room where we talk about STR Tech. And this coming Tuesday, I'm going to have the CEO of Smart BNB joining us. And so if you guys are interested in technology and how we can use technology to streamline our operations, definitely hop in and join in the conversation. That's it. And again, thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming up on here, John. It's always cool to hear what's going on in Hawaii. So keep coming over. And of course, like I said, Haley and probably the rest of us will be there to visit soon. Brian, please give us some wisdom and some parting words and let us know how we can find you.
Thanks so much for having me on this panel with all these great, amazing hosts. Amazing people. Hope there's amazing value that you got out of this, because you have a lot of gems, especially from an Airbnb space and a hotel. And I think the common theme that you've heard is that a lot of things that you may have heard misconceptions about real estate is just not true. There's a big opportunity for us. The world is changing, and your best time to take advantage of this opportunity is now. So kind of alluding to what Michael mentioned, action is what we want to see. I started 2 years ago, and not having anything, and being able to see millions of dollars made through real estate. My personal goal this year is I want to create 100 millionaires. So if you're trying to be one of those millionaires, please DM, because we want to be able to make sure that people take action, and that personally, I don't want to see people struggle like the way they did during the pandemic, when people were losing jobs, people were being forced at home. And meanwhile, the rich just got richer. So if I can help you and you want to be that millionaire, please, by all means, DM me. My phone number is in my profile, my email address. I make myself accessible because I want to see people succeed. So thanks again, Sean, for having me here, and looking forward to helping people succeed this year.
Yes, sir. Keep grinding. Keep leading. Thank you so much. Mac, Mr. Seattle.
Sean, thank you so much, and thank you. It was fun to have Haley up. I wanted to ask some questions, but maybe next time. Thank you for bringing everyone up here. Everyone's awesome. Thank you. I'm almost to 1,000. I almost got up thanks to Michael's room yesterday. Yes, I had my company really, like the course that it got changed due to regulations. It didn't shut me down like Theron kind of mentioned that he saved his company. But like COVID basically did. It was like a 1-2 jab back-to-back years. But I think being up here with everyone gives me a lot of inspiration just to not like fold and to keep on punching. I know I went from $0 in my bank to I would qualify myself as a millionaire now, and I don't make any products talking about this or coaching anybody, but I do know that it's a young industry, and I got in at the very I didn't get in at the beginning, but I've learned a lot in the last 8 years. The Clubhouse obviously wasn't here, back then, which would have been interesting, and if that would have even how that would have worked out for some. But anyway, I think connecting with everyone here has just been great for me. I love mastermind type groups, and being a part of this is just awesome. So I look forward to more with you, Sean, and the sharing. If you guys have any questions for me about regulations, Theron is the guy for that, and I'm trying to help him and try to figure out how to potentially figure out a playbook for repealing regulations. That's kind of just really something I'm really focused on learning from Tara on what I can do to make it better, to be better at that and learn more about that. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
We'll get there, Mac. No worries. We'll get there.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do. This is important work that you both are taking under. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Do I get to say bye as well?
Oh, of course you do. Last but not least, Haley. Welcome to Clubhouse.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for letting me be a part of this unique experience, and I feel blessed to be, up on this level with each of you smart minds. I myself love to share and help educate. So if there's anybody out there who does want some advice or help, just, hopefully it's okay I say this, Sean, but I'm up here on Clarity as well. And
yep.
Would love to talk and help anybody out there who needs it. So thank you again.
Yeah. How many properties are you overseeing right now here in Dallas?
Directly in DFW, we are hitting 55 company-wide. Indirectly, we're a little over 100, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these new Dallas ones are all you. So I'd say, yeah, if you want to talk to somebody about building an Airbnb business, Haley's been grinding. So all of this stuff is fresh in her head. So I will co-sign. She knows what she's doing.
Happy to help.
Yeah, it's super cool to have you in Clubhouse. I guess I'll say goodbye now. Everybody, we're all here up top to help you guys reach the next level, whatever that level is. You're all here listening in because you want more from your life. You have a plan and you're trying to get there. And you know that knowledge and applying knowledge is going to be your key to that success. So I want to congratulate you all for putting in the necessary time it takes to study, to know, to network. Keep it up. I love all of you. I'm rooting for you all. I want to see you all successful. So all of us here, even all of you at the bottom, we can just show up at John's Properties in Oahu and throw one big massive party once we're all making killer monies in real estate. So
I'm down.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get like 1,000 people. And of course, we're raising enough money on Theron's nonprofit to put Jay Massey out of business because he's got to write a check that's too big for this nonprofit. And then we'll pay his plane ticket to get to Florida. To Hawaii because he was so nice to make that big donation. But with that said, all things must come to an end, and this 2.5 hour long room is finally reaching the end of its content. We will be doing more this week, next week. I will see you guys in Clubhouse. I'm almost here every day. And this has been live streamed to YouTube. Those of you on YouTube right now, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to end both streams. You can go to my YouTube channel and see this from the beginning if you tuned in late. And like I always will say, everyone, I will see you on the other side.